Wrong one. Hello and... Ooh, hang on a second. Let me make sure I'm not double broadcasting here. Okay, there we go. Hello and welcome to the final House of the Dragon stream of the couple of years, I assume at this point. Finale of the Hot D is upon us. Lots of strange things happening at episode, bodies exploding in ways that I did not expect, and a lot of dragon lore, which I'm sure will delight those in the chat, but especially my esteemed guest, Aziz of History of Westeros. Hello, Aziz. Welcome back. It's been so good to see you.
Hey, Matt. How's it going? I'm esteemed, am I? I think that means I've been promoted. I didn't realize it. That's cool. Before I was just steamed.
That's right. Steamy Aziz.
In front of that sounds a lot cooler. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. This is cool. I haven't done a show and I don't know how long it's been.
2 days? 1 day? Non-stop streams.
I do pre-shows and stuff like that, and well after shows, but right after?
Right after. Although, sort of not right that after this time.
Yeah, not right after. Yeah.
Everybody saw it in the last couple days, so not exactly fresh.
Very weird.
But it's still, even after watching it a few times, still hitting me in certain ways, and it's one of those things where it gave me a lot more to think about as I kept going back to it, like the way things were unspoken. We were talking about this before the stream, the connections back to previous episodes, things I didn't catch the first time through. So this is a little bit more of a review than a reaction, but you know what? We can fake it. We're talented people. We can pretend to be extremely excited like it just happened.
It just happened.
Oh my god, did you see that, Aziz? Holy shit.
No idea that was going to happen. 4 years ago.
Just the craziest thing. Yeah, when he read Fire and Blood.
I guess even before that, World of Ice and Fire had a lot of these major moments, I suppose. What was that, 2014? Yeah. But we surely didn't expect to ever see it on television. That wasn't really more than a pipe dream, I suppose, back then. So, yes.
Thank you,
true. Gods of television.
The same thing happened to like a whole bunch of Fire and Blood stuff I did back in the day, where it was just like, I'm doing this for fun. I don't think this is ever going to be a TV show. And then all of a sudden, just like watching my YouTube channels, they all just fly up. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that was unexpected, but I'm happy about it.
Why, thank you.
Thank you for everybody who wants to know more about the Strongs. That's what we're here for.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really just came roaring back like the tide. We're lucky it's good, aren't we?
Yes, we are. We are very lucky it's good, and that suddenly everybody wants to know everything about Larys Strong, or at least I am. Very lucky myself. And even though we did literally know what was going to happen in the episode, there were still a few big surprises there. 2 of them, I would say.
Yeah, I think so. There were some pretty big surprises, and it's been consistent the way they've surprised us. For the most part, I mean, there's been a few other surprises, like a dragon bursting through the floor is obviously an exception, but most of the surprises have come in the way that they've interpreted the characters within the framework of the open space created by the source material. Fire and Blood has that.
Open space, you say? You mean
the
fact that literally nobody knows what happened?
Yeah, like nobody knows what happened up there on that big ass dragon. That's the Maesters wouldn't know that. Aemond didn't tell them. No one else was there to witness it. They just afterwards they're like this
must have happened.
Angry, vindictive kid who's always had it out for the guy who cut out his eye. Next thing you know, his dragon's been torn to shreds. They're not going to assume it was an accident. Like how it's hard to imagine that it was an accident, but we see it, and that was. He lost control. Vagar not obey, and that was nicely extra tragic that way, and kind of set up. There's a lot of things we can point to in the show and in the text that imply this sort of thing happens.
Yeah, it happens pretty much all the time, and I've been happy about it. I mean, there were some Twitter threads in the last couple of days about people about that I made as well. Also, Luca over at Watchers on the Wall about how, it's been really good to see these characters fleshed out and not just the caricatures that they're often shown as in Fire and Blood, because obviously it's lacking depth. That's the point of it. It's like an outline, and they're filling in the gaps in between, and I've been really enjoying that, especially Aemond. We'll get to Aemond and what really happened with him, but he's been one of the characters along with Alicent, actually most of the Greens except for Aegon. Aegon just got trashed the same way he did in the book, but everyone else has really added a lot of depth to them.
Yeah, I agree and that's super important, because they have to, and otherwise they're not very interesting if they're just villainous, and they both have to be written well to rise out of that perception that they were given by the source material, and they have to be acted really well to captivate us. Even if we don't like them, we can still enjoy the performance. But as it turns out, I kind of like them, and I love their performances.
Very good performances, especially out of Aemond in this one. He kind of walk the line between insane and, well, this is definitely gonna be a video. So you can see the war inside of himself as he's going through this, and how he doesn't really, he's super conflicted, even though outwardly he's trying not to seem like it. Anyway, before we get going into the episode, we're gonna go through it scene by scene, drop some hot analysis, give you guys everything you need to know to go out tomorrow and tell your coworkers about how smart you are. And it's okay. You can claim you came up with it. It's all right. You don't have to credit me and Aziz. It's fine. So let's see here. So we got 275 people watching. Hello, everybody. If we get that like number up to 150, I am putting on a silly hat. We go to 200. I'll give away a free t-shirt. 250. A different silly hat. If we go above that, who knows? The sky's the limit. Maybe who knows what we'll do? Things will go crazy. Maybe
scanning my vicinity for hats of my own here.
Yeah. Maybe pick up a cat or something. I don't know.
Oh, a cat for the hat.
There. Yes. Oh, you do it every time, Aziz. Every time.
I'm gonna take it. I'm like Vagar. I can't be controlled if the right stimulus is there.
Except instead of eating dragons, it's just you and wordplay.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, exactly. Mine's a little less harmful. And
depends. Depends on the puns. Actually, there was that guy. Did you see I tagged you the other day on that Twitter thing where somebody commented on my Laris feet video, and the entire comment was this feet puns. I was like, this is a disciple of History of Westeros if I've ever seen it.
We went to the same school. Yeah.
He prays at your altar. No feet, chat. There's no amount of likes for seeing feet. Laris might be watching, and I'm not comfortable with that. So I think to start off with, the opening scene is the whole big painted table thing. And I thought it was interesting they started off with Luke, because we've seen a lot of Jace, more or less. Luke kind of just slashed the eye and giggled, and then just kind of, we haven't seen a lot from him. And that's one of those kind of kisses of deaths in House of the Dragon. The second they get characterization, that person is about to die. Oh, there is a cat anyway. No need to slam the leg for a cat. They just kind of show up.
They do. They sense the opportunity as well. Like a dragon.
Silly kitties. He doesn't want Driftmark. He's sure that the sea snake is going to die. I actually thought it was interesting that he sided with Vaemond. He was like, I think Vaemond was right. I think he should have gotten Driftmark. I'm going to suck at it.
Yeah, it's funny. He's like, well, he doesn't need to bring up that whole bastard part, but I guess he's right about that too. But no, but yeah, that was really interesting, because it was meant to be sneaky, I think, from the perspective of a more casual viewer. What they get there is, Luke's thinking the sea snake's going to die, and instead he's the one who dies, and the sea snake doesn't. And when Rhaenys shows up, they're expecting it to be the news that the sea snake has died, but no, it's news from King's Landing.
Whoops.
So yeah, I thought that was kind of neat the way they spun that, so it came out in a couple different ways.
just making sure Luke has maximum anxiety at all times. Oh no, the sea snake's not dead. It's just, we're going to war. No biggie or anything. Hope you've trained on Arax a lot because we're gonna need you, 14-year-old kid. I actually really like that conversation too between him and Rhaenyra. I don't know about you. I just kind of laughed where he's like, "Oh, I wish I was as perfect as you, Rhaenyra, my mother." And I was like, "Ooh, ooh, you have not been watching House of the Dragon, have you, Luke?"
You shan't. Good thing you won't. That's the silver linings. You won't have to see how bad it gets.
Yeah, that was not great. And she's like, "Oh, I'm not so perfect." All right, yeah, we know, Rhaenyra. We've seen all the imperfect things you've done, in graphic detail. Nobody mentioned Kristen Cole. Nobody. There was another line that afterwards that kind of made me cringe where she said, "My father looked after me and helped me prepare for my duties. Your mother will do the same for you." And I was like, did he though? Did he? Did Viserys prepare you to do this?
He didn't really. Sort of just left you to your own devices.
Whatever you could absorb from the book about Dorne and Nymeria, just sort of extracting wisdom from the pages while you're just fucking off sitting in front of a weirwood tree. I guess that's preparing you to rule and then ignoring you for 6 years. I don't know about that one. I mean, she's bucking up Luke. I understand. She's not going to give him the hard truth like, your grandfather sucked. He didn't do anything for me.
It's like, hey, Viserys is like, hey, that's how I was raised, man. No one taught me to be king. They just picked me at the council and said, here you go, man.
I like the idea of Viserys being a stoner.
Yeah,
just like on his way to Margaritaville.
Like, why'd they pick me, man?
Rhaenys asking the same questions.
Yeah. And Luke asking those questions too. Now, Luke doesn't come off like he's high, but he definitely didn't want the responsibility of a sailing lordship where, as he put it, he gets green sick from, in the harbor or whatever.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of surprising because we saw Luke and Corlys talking at Laena's funeral. And Corlys was like, "You're going to be the Lord of Driftmark. You're going to be great at it. You're my blood. Like, this is all going to be great." It's like, didn't follow that one through, did you, Corlys? He doesn't know how to sail a ship.
Yeah,
didn't really.
Another thing.
Yeah.
I think he missed out on by going off to the Stepstones. I guess the silver lining of that being he won it entirely, which was a surprise.
Yeah, that one came out of nowhere. Oh, hat time. Silly hat. Thank you guys for slamming that button.
Oh, that's one of your iconic hats.
I'm going to try and see. Hang on a second. There we go.
Seeing is important.
Yeah, I guess if we're reading from a doc or something like that. But yeah, so then afterwards, Sir Darklyn arrives, and I was surprised to see him. I was wondering, me and Lady Gwyn and Yokba were wondering if they were going to merge him with Harold Westerling. If they were just going to make him a different member of the Kingsguard, because it seemed so obvious that after Harold left that he was clearly doing his Barristan the Bold, and he was going to go find his Dragon Queen. Like, I was sure that's what they were doing. And instead, no, Harold Westerling's just flat out missing, and Stefan Darklyn is just himself. Kind of a curious thing on that one.
Yeah.
What do you make about that? What do you think they're doing with Harold?
Darklyn had been around earlier, but we had looked through the ones in Fire and Blood, and there's one Kingsguard who goes to Storm's End at the beginning of the war with Jaehaera. Just sits there the whole war, and just that's all he ever does. So that's Willis Fell. So we figured that's the one that they cut to replace Harold to put Harold Westerling, extend Harold Westerling's life, because all the other ones now are counted. Now that we found out that this last guy was Laurent Marbrand, that was the other missing link.
Right.
But as far as Harold Westerling, I definitely have no idea. It was very curious how they chose to use this very famous actor, one of the most famous actors in the show.
Yeah.
Not more so than like Matt Smith, but more so than most everybody else. And so it was odd the way they used him, which implied there would be a bigger role. So I guess in some sense, it's not surprising that they're not done with him. But in the other way, it is curious and like, well, what are they waiting for?
I don't know.
holding, like he could have gotten there pretty quickly.
He could have
It wouldn't
gone
have been
with
that hard.
Eric. Like, why not?
Yeah, exactly. Or something. Yeah. Or maybe he's like, oh, well, now there is a king, so I'll just go back to the Greens. But he's like, oh, Cole took my job. I'm subordinate now.
Yeah, he's no longer Lord
Yeah.
Commander. Kristen appears to be, so I don't know where he's doing. He definitely seemed to express a lot of distaste for everything about trying to kill a Rhaenyra. I assume that meant that he used to be her sworn shield, so I assume there's some sort of like big brotherly, fatherly protection thing going on there, but just doesn't show up for it. Like, I do not understand. I don't know, like, if you're gonna save him, okay, but then use him. But they didn't. Like, just off screen. I don't know. Maybe yeah. Maybe he's gonna show up with Laenor in a couple seasons or something like that.
There's a whole squad of characters that got away. Yeah.
Characters that should be dead and are not. Yeah, the undead.
It's like
hot D.
he just did the math and was like, Laenor is the true king, and people are, but he's just really bad at math. So
of course,
what went wrong. It's like, I'm a Kingsguard, not a mathematician, not a legal scholar, and it just went wrong. Yeah, what are you gonna do?
I did enjoy that he took up the duty of Sir Harold and announced people as they walked in. I was like, I guess that's what the Kingsguard does. That's their primary role, considering they can't protect anybody. Not really their thing, protecting. They're mostly just announcers.
Yeah, with dragons around, their job is a bit different. I mean, on one hand, there's nothing they can do when the dragons get involved. On the other hand, it's like, well, one most vulnerable thing about a whole dragon situation is the rider itself. So you really need to protect them.
I guess so. That's all they can do. Back to Sir Stefan. He walks in. He says, Princess Rhaenys. They have been very clear that it's not Rhaenys, it's Rhaenys. I guess that's what I'm gonna have to call her from now on. Brings her in, and Damon immediately just does what every fan did for the last week and says to Rhaenys, so they didn't kill you. You didn't swear to them. You got away. How'd you do it? She's like, oh, well, I got on Meleus and flew away. And he's like, why didn't you kill everybody?
Yeah, why didn't you just torch them all? I was like, I know that's what you would do, but
yeah. Kind of interesting answer from her there that actually Eve Best kind of clarified after the episode. I'm pretty sure that they knew they needed some more of her explaining things. That at this point, even though she had sort of thrown in with Rhaenyra, she wasn't sure she really wanted to fully, which was a little confusing after the whole Vaemond thing. But she explained that she didn't have confidence in Rhaenyra as a monarch, and she didn't want to commit everything without Corlys on her own, knowing it would doom their entire house if she did at that moment. I'm like, okay, at least that kind of gets you most of the way there.
Yeah, I'm surprised no one. I guess they just haven't thought about it enough. But I think she could easily mention the whole slaying taboo. That's still a pretty big deal.
I guess that's not a thing for her.
She doesn't care. Yeah,
didn't come up.
She's like, oh yeah, I could have. I was like, I could have said that. Dang, yeah.
Would have made it look cool.
There was a Septon up there. I didn't want to kill him.
Allison, she's innocent. I didn't need to kill her. Or Helena. Everyone loves Helena. I couldn't kill her. I would have bought that one.
Yeah. She could have just like eaten Aegon and not torched anyone.
Actually, in the chat, our shrinkster Emma, Damon saying, why didn't you do the war crime we wanted you to do instead of the war crimes I usually do? Yeah. Damon's like, come on, war crimes. What's wrong with war crimes? They're not crimes. We're royalty. There are no crimes. If you win, there's nothing.
We have a very specific set of war crimes we do,
and not this one, says Rhaenys. I guess so. The other thing that I thought was interesting about this is that both of them are very suspicious of Rhaenys as Rhaenys as soon as she walks in. They both question her on how she got away and who she swore to, which I thought was a little strange because if she had sworn to Aegon, I assume she wouldn't be there. Like, you can just bypass that one and just be like, all right, so she's but of course we know from watching the episode that they're setting up that she's not going to throw for Rhaenyra instantly, that she needs to be convinced. But I don't know, that one felt like a little bit like working backwards. But I thought the other thing that that really, wait, hang on, where is it? What was the other thing? It was
Talking about her husband, or
yeah, that's it. I lost my place.
how obviously she's got that to legitimately fall back on as something to wait and say, well, it's not my call entirely. This is such a big decision. If I'm going to have this event that's be remembered forever on their house, and he should have a say in it, that kind of thing. Whether that's true or not, well, it is true. Whether she feels that way or not, she can say it. And we've already seen she's pretty smooth about timing and seeing which way the political winds are blowing and things like that.
But she already did. She already threw the future of her house in with Rhaenyra. It was like, did you really need to take a step backwards on that one? I thought you were already all in with the whole double marriage thing. That one seemed like, we're tight.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
I guess there's also, I mean, like a lot of people, as Rhaenyra pointed out, they haven't seen battle. You know, Rhaenys is not a young lady, but she's never torched anyone.
True.
I don't think. I mean, she did just kill a bunch of peasants there. To her, that doesn't count.
Those aren't people. Those are peasants.
Yeah. So
general way they think. Also,
I think there's a little bit of that involved as well. It's not as easy for her to pull the trigger like it would be for Damon, for example.
And that comes up a lot. That's a major theme of the season so far, is that none of these people have really seen war. It's just Corlys and Damon. Everyone else is kind of playing at it, and they've all built up in their heads of what they'll do when war finally comes and how they'll react, but none of them really do. Even Rhaenys, who is apparently an expert dragon rider, and she's totally willing to like guard the gullet and stuff like that, but yeah, she hasn't seen combat, and she hasn't seen dragon combat, and who knows, it would probably be pretty terrifying. Also, we just hit 200 likes on the stream. Thank you, everybody. So if you guys want to win a free t-shirt, perhaps even an ass waffle, go ahead and type Rhaenys in the chat, and in 5 minutes we'll roll it. Somebody will get themselves a free shirt. Not you, Aziz. Don't you dare. I already gave you a free shirt. I think I gave you a discounted one, at least. I think that's how it works.
I have a Joe Magician shirt. I don't recall the circumstances of its acquisition.
I'm going to say I gave it to you because it makes me look better. I don't actually remember either. I gave away a bunch of them. So yeah, type Rhaenys in the chat to win yourself a shirt.
Oh,
go ahead.
Speaking of Rhaenys, she said she was going to patrol the gullet, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we saw where the real gullet was dangling from Vagar's neck there. Oh, yeah.
Got him. Yeah, the real gullet. It really didn't hit me until I thought it back. I looked at the painted table. I'm like, oh, so they imagined that as like a mouth? That's like a dragon's mouth? Is that like a dragon bay or something like that? I mean, it's called Blackwater Rush, but it was like, that is a weird name to give that a throat. That's the throat?
It's a small gull.
I guess.
A baby gull.
Small gull. This isn't Pokemon, Aziz.
It's a gullet.
I bet that's the name of Pokemon that I don't even remember at this point. Oh god, the entire chat is just spamming Rhaenys. Rhaenys. I'm gonna say that 5 times. I'm gonna get it.
I typed gullet.
Oh my god, unbelievable! You know what? You're not winning a thing, Aziz. Nothing. Also, as soon as Rhaenyra hears the news that Aegon has usurped her, she instantly like grabs her stomach, and like every emotional beat that comes out of Rhaenys' mouth, she instantly goes like, ooh, ah, ooh, like she's getting punched in the stomach. And then she reaches on her dress and she sees blood coming out. I thought the timing was, they very much made this pregnancy seem magical in ways.
Mm-hmm.
Like she's like she's emotionally losing that child. That's I guess what they're trying to say there. Like the shock of hearing this news is what's making it come right now, which was I'm not sure if that's a thing, but it's certain based on what happens later and what we know about that kid and the flashes with Cyrax. There's definitely something different about that pregnancy, sort of similar to Daenerys and Rhaego, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. It was very dragony, as if maybe the reason she didn't want any help was because she didn't want any human contact, because she was like not in a human headspace, and the child was like reverberating with that or something. It was really interesting, and there's a lot of that in the whole episode.
Mm-hmm.
All the dragons we saw had the bonds were kind of on display, and like that's a bit of, it feels like setup that'll be more important going forward. There'll be even more dragon lore and issues of control or lack of control.
Mm-hmm.
Because mostly they've only been asked to fly from place to place, and their vehicles, they're just like fast cars. Fast,
Yeah,
like
that's right.
personal helicopters.
Big, dangerous,
like
fast cars.
Yeah, they're just intimidating helicopters. Yeah. So we're just now seeing the different circumstances and how they can be used, and that's bringing up new circumstances, and her level of tension creates new emotions within her bond that the dragon, the Cyrax, had never felt that before.
I wonder, yeah, you think that was like the first time they'd ever like felt that way between them? Because it seems surprising to both of them. There was like flashing back and forth, like, oh, hey, I didn't know we could do this.
Didn't have that for Joffrey, so I think that was pretty deliberate. So I think maybe there was something else going on. Like she didn't have the same struggle with her other children, as far as it's implied.
No,
and
very, very, very strange. And they also, there's a bunch of lines that tell us that this is supposed to be highly unusual. The Maester says this should not be happening. It's way too soon. The midwives are all freaking out. They've been pretty calm, except for the time Emma died. The rest of the way through. Again, the threat of death via pregnancy is being set up. Like, oh no, is Rhaenyra about to die right here? I mean, obviously not. She's the main character. Definitely not actually going to happen, but they're kind of, they invert it on you, and instead it's the well, the baby then ends up coming out. And well, actually, we'll get to that in a little bit. But blood everywhere. This is like the most gruesome thing that we've seen since Emma was cut in half. So, yeah. Not great. Somebody asked me after I'd watched the episode, one of the Song of Ice and Fire mods, they was like, so what'd you think of the birth scene? I was like, extremely graphic. They went over the top on this one.
Yeah, this was the season of births.
Yeah, a lot of them.
Yeah, we really got that. But yeah, it was intense. I mean, it was one of the stands in contrast to all the really cinematic scenes that we discussed at the beginning. This was more it had its cinematic elements because of the dragon flashes, but it was also more about loss and her emotions about it all. The intensity of that was more dominant than just how it looked, or even the supernatural was kind of secondhand to that, because it was so intense, and because we've become kind of used to this as a theme this season, as we said. That we were kind of conditioned to it, given how much it's come up.
I felt like they were very much calling back to Daenerys here, but this was like I mean, there literally was a pyre, like she is reborn afterwards. The dragons are dancing, that kind of stuff. Like there's somebody literally singing to dragons in this episode. It felt like they were just redoing that whole scene on the Dothraki Sea with Rhaenyra.
That's a great point. Even the kneeling happens right after that.
Everyone swears to her.
Burning.
Yep.
Good point.
Interesting inversion there that they a very sneaky way. They also, I mean, they had a bunch of lines from her this episode too. They had the thing about I won't be the queen of bone and ash and stuff like that. So obviously they're calling back to her. The interesting thing is, as she goes into labor, Damon instantly goes into war mode. He grabs the council, everyone get around this painted table, where he starts giving out orders. He's Rhaenyra, ready or not, war is coming, I guess, in a sense. But then we go out to the outside and we see an interesting scene where Jace and Luke are training, but Jace is being really a dick about it. He's hammering Luke with his sword. He's yelling at him when he's down on the sand. What does he say to him? I didn't get what he said, but basically
he
just
said,
like,
what was that?
Yeah, like screaming in his face. And even the Kingsguard, Laurent Marbrand, was like, hey, I don't think you're helping here. Like, what are you doing, Jace? Like, he's not going to learn if you just like push him into the dirt. And I'm guessing this was a callback to the last episode where Jace felt totally overmatched by Aemond. And he realized that, like, oh, I have no shot against him. And that he got embarrassed. And we saw that with the High Valyrian thing, where Jace is a very motivated young man. And when he realizes he has a fault, he's going to try and fix it. And I guess that's what's going on here. But he took it out in a very uncool way by beating up his brother, basically.
I think also it's a callback to the scene where their real father, outed himself, where Cole was intense on purpose and was telling him to beat him while he was down and all that. And then obviously Harwin steps in at that moment and it goes from there. So I think that was a little bit felt a little bit similar, especially with Kingsguard coming up to say that, the Kingsguard kind of playing the role of their of Harwin there without the without it going quite so far.
The one Kingsguard doing his job, like, hey guys, don't beat up other princes. Not a good thing. Like, that's a bad one. Oh, sorry, you're gonna go ahead and roll for the Luis McFarland. Go ahead and send me a DM on Twitter at @TheJoeMagician, or send me an email to AskJoeMagician@gmail.com. I'll send you a code. You can pick something up. Way to go, buddy. Also, remember, guys, 10 more likes, different silly hat. Okay? Silly hats. There's so many of them. Actually, there's just 2. This is all I got. This is the extent of my ability to bribe my audience for likes. But yeah. Also, fun. Have you heard the tinfoil that maybe Jace, his father, is actually Kristen?
I have heard that. I'm not sure what to make of it. I don't know if I guess the timeline would support it, but yeah, there hasn't seemed to be any allusion to it. It feels like they would bring it up or something.
I don't know. Him beating the shit out of he's certainly acting like Kristen right there with Luke.
That's true. That's a good point.
A little bit of a crazy temper after getting embarrassed, but I'm pretty sure he's Harwin's, because otherwise why there'd be no reason for a triple fake out on his dad. That would be too much even for this series. So the interesting is Rhaenys goes out to grab them, brings them back, and she fills them in about Viserys is dead in usurpation, and Jace like really steals himself in this moment. You really see him like feeling like he needs to step up. There's been a change in him in the last episode since getting his ass kicked by or almost getting his ass kicked by Aemond. Like how that punch didn't land, and being like Viserys complimenting him, he instantly goes, "Where's Damon?" It's like, oh, that he knows his stepfather is all about chaos and war, that he's about to screw things up with Rhaenyra's not looking. Well, good call on that one. That's exactly what's going on, Jace. And we get the quote, he's gone to madness, gone to plot his war. Really good line there out of Rhaenyra.
Yeah, that was really good. Yeah, he is like a aged animal this episode. He just really wants to get to it. Like, I'm ready to fight. He's frustrated that Rhaenyra is even considering this cautious approach. And he, like, from pacing when Otto shows up to the way he spins his sword as he's standing there, even when he's out there grieving, he's got his sword with him. It's not on his belt half the time. There's a lot of these little signs from frustration on his face to his body language that show this, and it's another great performance by Matt Smith there, showing that anger. And of course, we have to keep in mind, part of his mindset is that he believes that Alicent killed.
Oh, that was the thing I forgot to say. That's right.
Yeah,
he instantly goes, they killed him.
Kind of ironic because Alicent's because he warns everybody. He's like, all right, if they're going to do anything this quickly, it'll be stealth. Alicent's the one who stopped them from using a stealth assassination plot. So I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, also the Kingsguard, Westerling just wouldn't go along with it. So that may have foiled their plan too. But Otto would have tried again probably with somebody else if it weren't for Allison just being like, no, we're just not doing that, and stepping up and being like, that is not the plan actually. So
With the scavenger hunt for Aegon, which apparently means no assassins. All right.
yeah. So that's part of why when Otto shows up, he's very careful to point out the Dowager Queen Allison offers this deal.
That's
like,
right.
this is who sent me. I might not be here if I had won the race to to find my grandson. And look, he could have like looked over at Eric and been like, dude, like I trusted you. Like,
The true betrayal, the ultimate betrayal. That's right. Yeah,
that's my only real complaint is he didn't give Eric the stink eye. Otto didn't. He's like, he's too diplomatic for that. But he could have been like, I sent you to.
Damon really does see murder everywhere. Like everywhere he goes, he's like, that guy, that was obviously murder. He's like a Song of Ice and Fire fan, where he's like, well, that was clearly a murder. That was clearly a murder. That guy definitely killed that guy, which we know why. He killed a lot of people, including his wife.
He's a murderer.
Yeah. He is totally okay with it. He outright killed Vaemond. He totally killed Rhea Royce. Who knows how many others. He enjoyed himself cutting up the people of King's Landing. And it was the same thing happened after Harwin's murder by Larys, where he just goes like, well, obviously Alicent did it. It's like, obviously. I mean, yeah, that's what most people thought, I think, from reading Fire and Blood. And then obviously right here, he's like, oh, it's a murder again. It's kind of funny that Damon's perception of Alicent is exactly the same as what most people who read Fire and Blood had. Whereas like, well, she did all of it, obviously.
Yeah, it's Damon's like, it's the Mace Tyrell school of thought. Like, oh, that's what I would do. So that's
oh, the Mace Tyrell. We are blessed on this day. Yeah, I mean,
isn't it sad how we're gonna get like no Tyrells? I mean, I guess they could switch a thing around here or there, but they're pretty much not a thing in this era.
Yeah, that is a good point. If we're gonna see anything from the Reach, we know that the Tyrells. I mean, this is a book spoiler. Who knows what they do in the show at this point? Because this is very much a thing that happens not on the page. This is a fan assumption. The assumption is that the Tyrells refuse to help the Hightowers and then basically tell their vassals to stop them, more or less, because they all attack the Hightowers as soon as they start the march. It's like, would they do that without the Tyrells like help assuring them that they'll back them? Probably not. But
you can believe like the Beesburys, for example, because of their lord being killed. That's a good reason. But some of the others, it's like, were they really that loyal to Rhaenyra, or is this something? Yeah, what else is going on here?
It turns out everyone hates the Hightowers is basically the thing that happens there.
Been looking down on us all these years from their high tower.
That's not even a pun. That is just where they are.
Still.
I expect more his
the name of their house.
Oh my god. We're gonna have to get some better puns for the rest of this.
All right.
They break into the War Council after that scene. Sea Snake is not gonna die. He's on his way from Evenfall to Dragonstone. Cool. We find out that their closest allies are the Darklands, the Massies, and the Bar Emmons. Great Bar Emmon reference. Don't get enough of the Bar Emmons.
Top Bar Emmon reference there, yeah.
There it is. There it is. We got there like 10 seconds later. And there's a little bit of a power struggle here that's, I think, foreshadowing what's going to happen with Rhaenyra, where Jace walks in and says, absolutely not, Damon. Back off. We're not doing anything until Rhaenyra says what we're going to do. And Damon basically ignores him, keeps giving out orders. He tells Lord Celtigar, or Celtigar, however you pronounce it, send out the ravens. He looks at Jace, he looks at Damon, he's like, absolutely, Damon, you got it, buddy. I'm on board.
That. He's pro dragon use already. We saw that guy. He's got the same relative spot in Fire and Blood, saying, "Yeah, let's use the dragons, man. Let's do the dragons. Come on, dragons. Let's just get it over with.
Dragons. Let's go. Come on." And it's like dragon envy out of the Celticars. This is one of the things that Ryan Condal talked about in an interview somewhere, and apparently it's a running joke that the Celtics are extremely upset that nobody realizes that they're the other Valyrian house in Westeros, because nobody cares. Like every time Corlys goes out and proclaims that, like, oh, we're one of the two Valyrian houses left, the Baratheons and the Celtics both go like, what do we chop liver? What is this? We're Valyrians?
Yes, you are chopped liver.
At least the Celtics are.
Well, yeah, it's not fair, man.
We're Valyrians too. It's like, are you? You just have an axe. You could have bought that. Who really knows? Get a bunch of crabs, whatever, man. And then we see Damon being stepdad, I guess, to Jace, where after ignoring him, he then says, "Come with me, I'll show you the true meaning of loyalty." And we get the scene with Caraxes. Well, sort of Caraxes. This is something we were talking about a little bit beforehand. Not only does Caraxes have his weird siren noise, that kind of sounds like something like a raptor or something like that, but so to set the scene, Damon is telling the Kingsguard to swear basically new oaths to Rhaenyra, or else he's going to kill them on the spot. But the thing that I think is the most fascinating about it is that this is extremely reminiscent of Robb Stark and Grey Wind, where Caraxes is basically like finishing Damon's sentences. He's like coming forwards and screaming at the right time and roaring when Damon wants to, like, for emphasis. And it's like, all right, so this is way closer than I think any of us realize, because Caraxes is basically like his hype man, which infers a level of connection between the two of them that is far beyond than I think any of us really thought about.
Yeah, it seems to, the evidence seems to grow that they have certain emotions they can interpret like a dog. It continues to be the best example that works for a real world example. Only that they're just so much more terrifying and large than dogs. But it does seem to be a similar sort of bond or level of understanding that's sort of crude, but in certain ways can be pretty precise. Like here.
Yeah.
And like, just be threatening. And, you know, the dragon doesn't understand exactly what's happening, but it's close enough. And yeah, it's also like reminding Luke of Jace of where power comes from, at least is the way Damon sees it, which is like, you come in and start giving me orders. It's like, well, it was kind of a Tywin moment where he's like, look who's actually in charge of the military here.
True.
You know,
that's very
when
true.
Joffrey was like, I'm the king. And he was like, you are, but if I give an order to the military, they're going to listen to me. So, like, who's really in charge here? So that's kind of what Aemond was doing. He's throwing his weight around, but it was also like, you're going to need to do this too. He wasn't only stepping over Jace. He was like, you need to learn to do this, kid. And, you know, you might have been able to control even me here if you had played it right.
That's true. Yeah. He is showing him a lesson of like, yeah, you could have gotten me to back down in the council, but you didn't, because you didn't have something over me that I cared about. And it's like, well, Caraxes is something everyone cares about. Mallory in the chat is losing her mind about how we're talking about the dragon bond and how close it is. Yeah, definitely. But I don't think it's every dragon rider. I think you're right that they've gone out of their way to make it look like Damon and Caraxes are basically the same person or close to it, where they feed each other's emotions. They can act basically almost on psychic command, which is a very Gurm thing to do anyway. A lot of his stories have that kind of thing where with like familiars and psychic powers and stuff like that. But if you guys want the example of what we're talking about, go back and watch the scene with Robb Stark and Grey Wind and Jaime Lannister when he's in the stockades, and then also the one where he's getting yelled at by Lord Umber, I think it is. And Grey Wind both times basically does what Robb wants without Robb having to even move. He's not giving hand motions. He's not giving commands. He's just standing there talking, and Grey Wind is acting exactly how he wants, and it's 1-to-1, same exact thing.
Yeah, totally. You're that's a really good catch to compare the two, and it's really similar. It's the same. Like this is why we've been in charge of the North for 8,000 years, or at least a big part of why
Mm,
is we we haven't had dire wolves all this time. But this is the kind of whatever form of power we've always held over everybody. We know how to use it. We've always been savvy with dominance, so to speak, and Damon understands that pretty well. Even if he's maybe even heavier handed than one might think, that's how he's been. He's always
mm.
been pretty imperious. Even with people who are his allies, he kind of talks down to them or finds ways to remind them that he's above them. Like with the sea snake, he's like, I can talk about my brother like that. You can't, like I didn't realize you had a brother for king for a brother, things like that. Just
Yeah,
like
that's true. That was a good one.
like I'm still better than you, even just always making sure that's in there. So yeah, it's a very deterministic way of looking at the world. But that again, you're right to point out like he sees murderers in everyone else, everywhere else, because he is one, and this has long been part of why he's seen Otto as so dangerous. And Otto is dangerous.
Sure.
Probably not quite as dangerous as Damon thinks. Like we haven't
No,
seen
he's pretty much a
Otto isn't
coward.
like he's not as you're right. He's not as aggressive or as like ruthless or as efficient. Like he wasn't. It was obviously this is a little bit off topic, but Otto expecting the Westerling to just go kill Rhaenyra was like it wasn't very smooth, bro. Like he wasn't
No,
very likely to do that. Like you should have had some real killers lined up for that.
should have
Maybe that
brawn or
wouldn't work
something.
either because like yeah, even and that plan has problems because they can't just walk into Dragonstone. But anyway, it just shows it wasn't skillfully done any way you look at it or thought through. So Damon is right to understand the type of man Otto is, but he's maybe also right to not have taken him super seriously as at the same time. But now he's seeing, okay, really did go farther than we thought they would. I don't think either. Like from where we're sitting, it was like, yeah, guys, you should have been more prepared for them to just steal the throne like this.
Didn't really have a plan. It was like it's kind of the opposite. The
Yeah,
Greens had their whole strategy ready to go. They like took out their notebook. They're like, all right, so check off this. All right, cool. This is how we're gonna take over the throne. Damon sort of has that, but Rhaenyra doesn't really. Kind of like Alicent doesn't really have considered thinking it through the whole way. That the both of them were kind of in denial that this would actually happen, even though Alicent's pushing for it and Rhaenyra's protecting her claim. Um, yeah, I think I'm guessing, and this is something I talked about in the after the episode. Emma Darcy talked about it a lot. That Rhaenyra didn't believe, and Alicent didn't believe that it would actually come to war. That both of them sort of relied on that, where the other people in their life were like, absolutely not. We have to prepare for war. Like this is definitely going to happen. We're going to get screwed with our pants on if we don't do anything. And it's like so everyone else is going on behind them, getting ready.
thought they could get the other side to back down. Like Rhaenyra and Damon thought that their whole "we'll kill," or I'll kill the father of my children. That's how badass I am. That they thought that kind of message was maybe enough, along with Damon and chopping Damon's head off and
Mm-hmm.
being a war veteran and all that. But it's almost like they're too naive to be intimidated.
Mm.
Because they don't like we said. This goes back to their inexperience of war. They don't know how bad it would be, how destructive it would be. Only a few people, like Rhaenyra, who even she is only doing it based on like what she's read. She's chosen the right sources to believe,
Mm-hmm.
but even she hasn't like been through it personally. She's still just like, well, the books say this is going to be ash and bone, and we should probably believe that, and she's right. But there's nobody there that's actually lived through it. Only someone like Damon and the Sea Snake who fought in the Stepstones, which is like a depopulated area where they're fighting against pirates.
Yeah, with like no
and
stakes. The stakes were his pride. Like
yeah.
nobody cared about was going to die there except for himself.
There's hardly any innocence around. There's there's not like exactly. It's a totally different thing entirely. Yeah, you're right. The level of pride is way different because that's already we've seen how much that's driving Damon here. He was angry. He thought that they killed his brother. Well, he still thinks that presumably that hasn't changed.
No. Nobody's gonna
And
convince him otherwise.
yeah, in fact, it's probably worse now because he's like, look, now they've killed your son as well. So Rhaenyra is going to not exactly push the argument as much anymore. It's like, well, yeah, maybe they did. This is the kind of people they are. Maybe, she's not going to be as rational about it now. And so Damon's just already gone off half cocked, full cocked. He's full cocked.
All the way cocked. That's right.
Ready to see the worst in them.
Yeah.
And not wrong for a lot of it. And of course, his own view is through his own lens of, well, everybody else is a murderer too. So that just escalates his own view of them.
And why he starts this council without Rhaenyra. Like, even though Jace tells him, no, you have to wait, he's like, no. And speaking of the waiting for Rhaenyra, we talked about a little bit. The birthing scene is horrific. There is blood everywhere, like tons of blood and sloshing and things falling on the ground.
Sloshing.
It's not good. Whoever did the sound design on this A+ job at making me go, ooh, ugh. Oh god, that sounded horrible. And as we were saying, as every feeling of pain with Rhaenyra, they cut to Syrax doing something. We can't really see what she's doing. She's just kind of roaring, almost like a sympathetic roaring kind of thing. Like we were talking about with Caraxes and Damon, where there's something going on here. A lot of connection. I thought about it in terms of, again, Daenerys, that before the eggs hatch and while she's pregnant with Rhaego, she in her mind sees the dragons a lot, especially in her dreams. She like sees them coming weirdly. And I think that's kind of what they were calling at here, but it also seems to have been like this intense moment that may have opened a door between them, because we see later in the episode on the Causeway scene that Syrax starts doing the same thing Caraxes was doing, where she starts reacting to Rhaenyra's emotions and her wants and desires in the moment, and Rhaenyra even just kind of looks at her and goes like, wait, what do you that's what I was thinking, why did you do it?
Yeah, she did seem a little startled. Like, yeah, she control of herself, but the dragon can't respond to her inner discipline when she has a surge of emotion. That's what the dragon feels, not the like, let me get control of myself. I don't know that the dragon feels that pump of the brakes the way that she's pumping it herself. I think it's the more intense things that maybe pass through the bond, not the little controlling mechanism or the mediating forces that your intellect would send to balance it out.
Yeah,
it's
not brand with warging, it's not skin changing, but it's close.
Yeah, it's on that wavelength. So Syrax was feeling it for sure, and they wanted to mirror, episode 2 as well. And she was a little upset there as well.
Yeah, someone in the chat said, why isn't Syrax grown? Because she's in the dragon pit most of the time. The dragons don't grow in captivity. That's kind of the downside. That's why Vermax and Arax are so small. I mean, they're young, but the reason Drogon grew out of control, and even he's not that big compared to like Vhagar, is because Dany just sort of let him go do whatever he wanted. And so they're kind of like goldfish in that sense. They grow to the size of their container. If they have the entire world to feast on, they'll get as big as they want. Syrax has been kept in the dragon pit most of the time, and then later kind of in that cave. So yeah, Syrax hasn't really grown. Bit of a bummer there. Kind of an unforced error by the Targaryens there. I understand why they put them in the dragon pit, but man, does it bite in the ass here, especially for when we're talking about just like Vhagar's enormous size. A little bit sad about that one. So
it's a big dragon.
Very big dragon. So the birthing scene itself is, as I said, extremely graphic. We get to the point where Rhaenyra is screaming and she reaches down and yanks the baby out of herself, like head first. But unfortunately, the baby is dead. But if I'm sure you did too, Aziz, I zoomed in and I froze frames on it to see like exactly how deformed this baby was. Like, are we going full? Are we going full tail and wings? Are we going like full dragon snout and stuff like that? And it's like, No, like definitely
Yeah.
off. The face
There
is,
was a leg missing.
yeah.
That was pretty clear.
The head was
I don't
kind
know.
of
Yeah.
gray and scaly a little bit.
And misshapen, but I don't know. It was I don't know if it was misshapen in like a lizardy way. It was just misshapen. Yeah, it was gray, but that's like grayish. But that was what you would expect for out of being dead already.
Yeah.
Uh, so, yeah, it wasn't that dragony. It was definitely seemed like it was just deformed. But there was maybe they just went with the Cyrax stuff to instead rather than. Yeah, interesting. I wonder if there'll be more discussion of it from the behind the scenes, if there's any, if they'll talk about it at all, if why they went with it that way, or what they were trying to aim for. But I see at least one person in the chat saying they saw a tail. I didn't
Oh,
see
was
that.
there a tail? I thought that was the umbilical cord. Maybe I missed
yeah,
it.
I was seeing that. I thought that's what it was too. But
Yeah, not great. Baby comes out dead. Although Rhaenyra instantly just tries to bring the baby up to her breast anyway, and we see Damon walks in afterwards and sees Rhaenyra rocking back and forth, crying obviously, and he just kind of walks away. Not awesome, not awesome stuff out of Damon. Not an emotionally available kind of guy. Um, People in chat are saying if there you can see two hornlets on the back of the baby's head. Entire back's covered with scales. I got the scales. I didn't see the hornlets. I'm gonna have to go back and try again. I tried. I didn't see those. I definitely.
someone said I saw 666 on his forehead.
Oh my god, the devil baby. Maybe there was a
that.
tail. I don't know. Didn't really see it. But yeah, Damon goes outside and they show the two, Rhaenyra and Damon, both kind of dealing grief in their own way. Rhaenyra goes to the Silent Sisters and starts wrapping it up. Damon's out in the beach, and I was really hoping, because we all saw the scenes from the from before the season of Damon like in the water doing the full anime, like throwing up his arms and like sitting in the waves and cursing the gods. And they went for a much more muted version where he just kind of dropped his head and looked incredibly despondent. But as you noted, definitely holding on to Dark Sister the whole time. Like that's his cane. Viserys had his cane he walked around with. Damon's relying on Dark Sister. He is just becoming more and more militant as the episode goes along. And if you think about it in terms of what's going on in his head, he, in the course of probably, it seems like a half hour, has learned that his brother's dead. Not only that, he thinks that his brother's been murdered. His wife's crown's been stolen. They're going to war. He's prepared for it. Like, they're going to lose a lot of people, and then loses his child as well. And it's like, boy, this is all on Rhaenyra too, but boy, did they throw a lot of pressure and emotion Damon's way. He is not making good choices at this point.
He's operating with more rage than thought in some cases here, where the version of him in the book is a little more calculating at this stage. It's Rhaenyra that's a little more cautious and saying, wait, well, let's not just send all the dragons to war. In Fire and Blood, Damon's the one who says that. And yeah, he's just almost like he's been ready for this for a while and he can't wait to do it. Or either way, he can't wait to do it. It's not necessarily as clear what exactly is driving him most, whether it's revenge or pride or both, or what mix of the two or something else. But you're right, he's just a little too ready.
He's losing. He feels like he's losing everything, and for a guy like Damon, his reaction to that is to lash out at people. Clearly, he wants the lashing out to be at Otto and the Greens, but as we see later in the episode, it kind of goes the other way. Oh, I forgot a bunch of super chats. I'm sorry. $2 from Rack9. Thank you very much. Singing Rainwald Chronicle vibes. Don't know what that is, but thank you. $2 from Sanrixian. This was a while ago. Dragons and feet. Yeah, I did make a video about feet. That is a thing I did. and a lot of people watched it, surprisingly to me. Happy Masquerader, $5. Still no closure on my boy Harold Westerling. Absolutely not happy Masquerader. They have ignored him in this episode. Really not sure why. Must have something big planned because I don't know. Yeah, we talked about this. Don't know why you'd hire Graham McTavish and keep him alive this long if it's not for a big purpose. Has to be something, unless they're fools, and they have not really been fools so far. A sad face from Sugar Skulls, dollar. Thank you very much. And actually, we were just talking about this. $2 from Sugar Skulls. Why do you think Damon choked Rhaenyra? What the fuck? There's a few more things to get through before I think we really get to the crux of it. But I think there's a real fast burn that they're pushing on Damon in this episode, like we were just talking about, where they are really throwing his emotions everywhere all at once. Actually, Emma in the chat pointed out that he's probably thinking of Lena as well and how he lost her in childbirth and how this is probably extremely traumatic for him in ways that Damon's not going to show. But the only way he's going to show is how increasingly angry and violent he gets, because that's how he shows things, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's important to remember how many of the characters are dealing with grief as well as the sense that they've had the throne stolen from them. Because Damon has lost his brother and a child, and Rhaenyra has lost the same, her father instead of brother, but same person, obviously. And then, of course, at the end, we don't see the full extent of her reaction, but she loses another son. So, and then we start off with Luke thinking he's going to lose his grandfather, and then realizes he's lost his other grandfather instead. And it's all a big, important part of how these characters are, emotions are framed, and how day to day they've been thinking about people in their lives that they're expecting to lose, and having all this happen instead, or in addition to it. So
hell of a day. It's a crazy day.
Rhaenyra did an awful lot in one day, and then I guess she got a day or two off before the painted table thing, but it was while they waited for a few lords to gather, I suppose.
Yeah.
But
speaking of, we get the funeral scene right before that. We were talking about how this is like a callback to Daenerys, and how this is very much the funeral pyre of Rhaego and Drogo and that kind of thing. As this happens, we see Sir Eric arrive. Somebody gave me a good mnemonic device for this. Auric goes with Aegon, Eric doesn't. So that's how you can remember them. Whichever one is with Rhaenyra, whichever one's with Aegon is A. Just A to A. There you go.
A to A.
There you go. That's how you can figure it out. No Harold Westerling. Eric gives the crown to Damon, not directly to Rhaenyra. He also swears a new blood oath. We didn't see the other two Kingsguard do it, but we assume that they did. Super and on board with Queen Rhaenyra. And after he gets the crown, we see that Damon really ponders it for a few seconds. Probably 10, 15 seconds, just kind of holding it while Rhaenyra's just kind of looking behind him going like, what are you doing with that, Damon? What are you doing with the crown? And you can see him really staring at the Targaryen thing. You can imagine there's a lot of emotions here because he wanted this for so long. He wanted this crown. He was furious when he lost his role as heir. On some level, Damon married Rhaenyra to get closer to the throne itself. Obviously, there's emotion there, but quite clearly there is an amount of ambition there. And finally, the crown's in his hand. Viserys is out of the way. It's it's kind of like what happened with Aemond and Aegon last episode, where Aemond briefly considers boy, that should have been mine. I think I could do a good job with this, but he ends up relenting and crowning her and calling her my queen. Glad we got a good my queen out of this one.
Yeah, I loved how his acting was particularly good there. It's obviously been great for the whole season, but the way he looked at the crown and thought about it for a minute and then turned around and McQueened it. That was really good. Yeah,
McQueen.
I like that. It's perfect because that's his descendant. So why not? He did it first. Now, officially.
Yeah, it's one of those things where for Damon, a lot of his interest in the throne is probably not actually ruling, but kind of chasing it. You know, the feeling of I'm always after it, and then he finally has it in his hand, and he's like, "No, this has to go to Rhaenyra. This isn't mine." Kind of, although clearly he is still very, very angry and full of a lot of rage. He at least recognizes this has to go to her. He can't just take it and ride off on Caraxes. You know, there's a lot of dies that have been cast here.
Mm-hmm. Many dice, many castings.
That's true. A couple more super chats. Happy Masquerader, $5. I have a feeling Westerly and Kristen will have a showdown at Butcher's Ball. Ooh, that would be interesting if he stays alive that long. So I'm shocked we didn't see him at Rhaenyra's sign this episode. Absolutely agreed. Me and Aziz have both been a little confused at why no Herald. Didn't cover it in the after the episode either, so we're just left to guess where he is. And $10 from Misericordia. The view of Storm's End was awesome. That and the painted table lighting up had me squealing. Very excellent visuals in this episode. The new painted table, A+, love that. Also, Storm's End's a lot taller than I remember. Like the one big pillar, like going up stories into the sky. That one kind of took me by surprise, but I was like, okay, all right, I like this Storm's End.
I'm not sure I remember that either.
I know. I guess it was supposed to be like the one big tower that it's built around. Like it looked very, very large. Just kind of came out of nowhere, I guess. Yeah, it was cool. It was good to see it. So actually, speaking of the painted table, they put all the candles underneath it and it lights up from underneath. Ooh. Really cool effect. Got to see all the names throughout it. Stannis didn't get this tech, apparently.
Yeah, they lost. They didn't realize what was going on, or he just didn't care. He didn't think it was cool enough. He's like, I don't need all this pomp.
I can read. What do I need the candles underneath for?
And then Dany's team just didn't figure it out. They just didn't realize, hey, if we put candles down here, this would be
come
like
through
all
the top.
sweet.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. That's why it didn't quite go right for them, is they didn't figure out the candle secret. Gotta learn the painted table before you hope to conquer.
The lost secrets of the painted table.
Yeah, I mean, that's Aegon. If you want to follow in Aegon's footsteps, you gotta
light it up, man.
Table's instructions. Mm-hmm.
All the things have been lost over the centuries. The secrets of how to birth eggs and the dragon gods and all this stuff. And then it's just like, also, you forgot how to use the painted table. Like
the table is the most important of all.
I also enjoyed that they got out their little figurines ready to go. Yeah, I guess every lord does have a set of these things made up of every other major house just ready to go. I mean, obviously Aegon would because it's Dragonstone. So clearly he would have planned this out. These are probably Aegon's little figurines. I just love that they just keep bringing these things back. I just love, you have to imagine the props department is just having the best time. It's like, all right, so we need like a whole set of these things. They're like, don't worry about it, fam, I got you. Let's come back a few months later and they're like, these are way more elaborate than we ever needed. Nobody's going to be able to see these. It's like, I did it for me. Which is basically what they said about the other ones too. They're like, remember the thing where they were picking the Kingsguard, and it was like Miguel Sapochnik was like, I didn't ask for any of that. They just kind of did it.
Yeah, that's the real. They'll have their own dance of the props after the show's over, when they fight over all these cool things. Like
no, Ryan Condal's going to take them all.
Yeah, he's gonna have planned some great maneuver where just some heist where it's all just gone. The next.
Find our way to whatever auctions those are. Those things are going to be sweet. Or if HBO just sells them at some point. That'd be nice. So Rhaenyra comes in. She's wearing the crown. Kind of looks like Viserys a little bit. They sort of have a similar hairstyle at this point, where it's just kind of like flowing down. Like visually, I was like, I think they're trying to remind me that she looks like Viserys here, which is part of what pisses off Damon, I believe. He's like, oh no, I married my brother. No, I meant to marry my niece.
Yes, what have I done?
The wrong one. Oh no. Kind of an awkward moment. Rhaenyra walks up, doesn't know how to rule, like doesn't know how to start the meeting, and everyone else is just kind of looking at her. But then she goes like to Rhaena and Baela, and like no, you guys come to the table. Like you're gonna be a part of this. I'm like, oh, okay. I forgot to mention one thing during the funeral scene. Rhaenys is the only one who didn't kneel, and again here, she's kind of sitting back and just kind of. She gives Rhaenyra a little smile, but she's kind of leering. You can tell from what Eve Best said that she's really evaluating if Rhaenyra is somebody she wants to throw in with. Even though she allows her granddaughters to go forward. Okay. Um, I also love the little moment that when Emma Darcy walks up, they grab their fingers like this and like squeeze them for comfort. And that's a thing I do. Like when I'm stressed out, I will just like grab 2 or 3 fingers, just kind of squeeze them like that. It was
Interesting.
like, oh, she's feeling a lot of stress right there. Rhaenyra is clearly showing it in little ticks, kind of like Allison did with her fingers. You know, like a lot of times people will rub their
Yeah.
neck when they're freaking out, or they'll
Fingertips.
grab something and squeeze onto it. Good acting in
Hmm.
that moment. Way to go, guys.
Nice. Yeah. Well done. Believable. Human.
Yes, he's a human. Weird how that happens.
I thought she was a dragon.
So we hear the plan here. They need to reach out to the Vale, to Storm's End, to Winterfell, and to Riverrun. Those are the kingdoms up for grabs at this point. Obviously, they say that the Western lands are lost. Tylan and Jason, no chance. The Reach is gone. Probably actually not gone. They probably should have thought a little bit more about this. That they kind of underestimated how bad a reputation the High Towers have in the Reach, and how much everyone else resents what they're doing. Every one of their neighbors hates the High Towers.
Yeah, there's a couple of, I mean, I guess if they had more time, maybe they could have gotten into more detail. But yeah, there's definitely some more nuance possible there. You're right. They could, and some allies within the Reach. It's not all or nothing kind of situation. And as what, and of course, there's things to be done about the West. There's those Greyjoys sitting right there next to them. That's a possible option.
Apparently, nobody wants to talk to the Ironborn. They're like, "Fuck them. We don't care. Whatever.
Yeah.
Not worth it."
If no one talks to them, they may let their ships do the talking. We'll see.
Classic
It's an
Ironborn.
interesting time for the Ironborn because they were able to do whatever they wanted for thousands of years until Aegon the Conqueror. So they've been held back for only one and a little bit of change century after being able to kind of roam free for all that time before. So they've had to go reaving outside of Westeros for over a century. Now they were like, hey, actually, maybe this is our chance to. Is it open season for the first time in a century again? Maybe it is, but maybe there'll be a little guidance or some sort of organization behind that. We'll see. So let's not forget about them, even though they weren't mentioned.
Also, no mention of the Dornish. Obviously, they're not a part of the Seven Kingdoms at this point, but they are still a force. And especially if you're gonna try and mess up the Reach and the High Towers in particular, the Dornish are the experts in that matter. Little curious, didn't come up. They're very minor in Fire and Blood at this point anyway, so I understand why they didn't. I was just wondering if they were going to do a fan drop and just be like, oh, what about the Dornish? And like, who cares what they do down in Sunspear? They're not a part of this or something like that. But for efficiency, makes sense.
Maybe they'll be jumping back in with regards to the stepstones, because that was a bit of a change. Maybe that's what made it easier. In Fire and Blood, I think this Dornish are on the side of the Triarchy for a while, and that maybe they're not, which helped Corlys win.
Yeah, that's true. We also hear who are Rhaenyra's sworn allies, and we get the heavy hitters. The Celtigars, the Stauntons, the Massies, the Darklands, and the Bar Emmons. Yeah, the response to that is, Corlys' response to her allies are, you're not winning a lot of wars with those guys. Pretty much just a bunch of crown land houses. I went through.
So about those dragons.
Yeah. Boy, we better get using those guys because you do not have a lot of troops coming from those houses. There are a bunch missing. I'm guessing some of these are going to end up sworn to some of the houses, like the Darklands, before they get exterminated, are a major force in the Crownland. So a bunch of these are probably like sworn to them. But the Rosbys, the Stokeworths, the Sunglasses, the Bruns, the Cargyles, the Cressies, the Harts, and the Hayfords, most of them are medium to small parts of the Crownlands. Most of them end up going for Rhaenyra, but I assume when they need to, they'll come up. But just in case any of you were looking out, where's the rest of them? That's the rest of the Crownlands. The Celtigars get a lot of them, actually. And the Massies, I believe, from Massey's Hook. They rule over quite a lot of people.
Yeah, y'all might remember the Massies from Song of Ice and Fire, Justin Massey's up there in Stannis' army trying to marry Asha, and he's the one that gets sent to talk to the Iron Bank in the book version of things. So yeah, they're got
They
that kind of
exist.
important spot on Blackwater Bay there.
Yeah. But yeah, no great lords there. The Crown Lands are kind of pushovers. They have been for thousands of years. Basically, whoever ruled the Riverlands ruled the Crown Lands. Most of the time, it was the Storm Lords. So yeah, not incorrect that this is not an impressive list of allies.
Not at all.
No, not going great. And then we start to see the fight breaking out between Rhaenyra and Damon. That Damon doesn't want to take orders from her, even though he just crowned her queen. Mostly that he wants to go to see Grover. God help me, they're keeping the names. All the Muppet and Sesame Street names for the Tullys. Grover Tully. As Damon says, the Riverlands are really the one that's up for grabs. They expect all the other lordships to go the way that they're probably going to go. The Vale's going to stay with Rhaenyra because she's an Arryn by blood. Winterfell's going to keep its oath because it always keeps its oath. They expect Storm's End to go with them because they're blood related. Whoops on that one. But he says the Riverlands is the ones up for grabs, so they have to go personally. He wants to go personally to treat with Grover. And Rhaenyra's like, you made that decision without me, huh?
Like, slow your roll there, uncle husband. Who's in charge here? You've put this crown on my head and I'm still wearing it, so hold on there. She's not convinced she even wants to go to war yet, though it does, from where we're sitting, it's like, well, that part Damon's got right, I guess, but we, I appreciate the effort, as a human being, you're like, you appreciate the effort to not have it become some mass break of bloodshed, even though that seems where it's likely to go. But yeah, they're taking some things for granted there in terms of who's going to ally with who. But they are right that personal visits are a lot more likely to bear fruit than sending ravens. That's as bad as that works out in the Storm's End case, it is generally true that was kind of bad luck. But we'll talk about that more later.
Yeah, and particularly the one they overlook is the Baratheons. Now, Rhaenyra does indicate that she knows a little bit about Boros, that he's a proud man, that the Baratheons are not easy to deal with, but she expects that because of the royalness of her and her messengers, that all it will take to get Boros back on board is just to basically say, hey man, your father swore to me, you're going to as well. And that's pretty presumptuous, especially because I made a thread about this actually twice now, and this might be a video too at some point. The Baratheons really feel put out at this point in history. All the love of the Targaryen family has been going towards the Hightowers and the Velaryons, especially the Velaryons. And the Baratheons are family. They're cousins, bastard cousins. But with Rhaenys, she is a Baratheon. Like, they feel very, very disrespected that they get consistently forgotten during Viserys' reign, and definitely now they do as well. Of course, there was the problem with Jaehaerys and I forget, Rhaegar Baratheon. There was a lot of tension there. So obviously you can understand why that relationship wasn't great, but they didn't repair it in these years. And especially glaring is the fact that Boros Baratheon has 4 daughters. And what does Rhaenyra have? 5 sons. Boy, does that seem like they should have figured this one out beforehand. And Boros is pissed about it.
Yeah, like Luke shows up and it's like, no, I can't marry one of your daughters. But
I got 3 more.
My brother Aegon, or Joffrey rather. Joffrey's not married, so he could just say he's the next oldest one. He could say, well, my brother Joffrey could marry one of these girls, and well, whoops.
Yeah,
didn't think of that.
Ends up being one of the primary sins of the Targaryen house is just constantly not doing right by the Baratheons as much as they feel they should, especially since they're the lords of the most powerful kingdom, pretty much. Like, militarily, where the Storm Lords go is usually the way the war goes. And They are prideful, and they continue to be annoyed that they're not allowed to have dragons outside of Rhaenys. Meanwhile, these Valyrians, they're just a bunch of seahorse loving shitheads out in the gullet. Like, they're not your blood. Well, kind of they are, but that's how the Baratheons see it. It's like, we've been
Yeah,
disrespected ever since we got the Stormlands.
they got, Jaehaerys and Alysanne understood that. They married their firstborn son to Jocelyn. But then, yeah, you're right. They didn't keep that going. They didn't maintain that relationship. So that was, what, in the year 70 something or 60 something. So
Yeah.
like 70 years ago at this point.
It's the
While
old
back.
what'd you do for me lately thing out of the Baratheons.
Nada.
And you understand why, because like they can control the Valyrians a lot more they can control the Stormlands. Like, the Stormlands with dragons is a serious threat to the Iron Throne. The Valyrians are not.
Yeah.
So it makes sense tactically, but doesn't stop them from feeling disrespected.
Yeah, the Valyrian strengths is their ships, and that is very vulnerable to dragons. It's like it's hard for them to turn on. It's hard for ships to turn on dragons. Like, aha, we've got the upper hand now. Like,
Well,
I don't know about
later.
that. Yeah, except for there are
Well, one
occasional
time.
exceptions. There is
a little bit of a spoiler there. The ships do end up throwing it, but yeah,
that tactic wouldn't work against Vhagar, for example.
And this goes back to the whole thing with Willem Blackwood and the duel that happened in front of Storm's End, where they just don't like Rhaenyra, and for some reason she thinks that they do, and that is a terrible miscalculation on her part and Viserys's part, especially with this war is coming. We talked about this earlier about how it seems like Rhaenyra and Alicent were like, they were ready to defend themselves, but they weren't super planning for it ahead of time. This is the one they needed to plan for ahead of time. They needed to make sure the Baratheons at no point would ever switch sides, and neither one did it.
Did not lock that up like they should have. You're right. It really should have made sure, and they didn't.
That's an easy one to do with 5 sons.
Yeah, it was one of the many mistakes in lack of preparation that they made. You pointed out how the Greens made plenty of mistakes in preparation, but they at least did some preparing and like took over the council, basically, things like that. The Rhaenyra and Daemon's faction, they just did not do much preparing other than Daemon like, oh, I got some eggs incubating. That'll help us in 20 years. Yeah.
If we need to feed the cannibal, I guess that'll help. Don't really know what else is going on there.
And a little too far ahead there, Damon.
We get the accounting of the dragons at this point. We get Damon has it like routed off, ready to go. He's like, we have 13 dragons, they have 4. We also have the 3 wild dragons. Name drop Vermithor and Silverwing. But Rhaenyra points out, like, your dragon's the only one that's been to war, and my kids have never been to war. I've never been to war. They've never been in a dragon battle. So it's like, she's not wrong. Like, the number is deceiving because they still have Vhagar, and Vhagar is the force multiplier here.
That's not inconsiderable, as we just saw at the end there. Obviously, Arax is pretty small, but even a bigger dragon would have been humped similarly. Was not a contest at all. The only contest was whether Arax could get away, not whether, obviously, there's never going to be much of a fight there. But yeah, just by itself, Vhagar is huge. So, I didn't mean it that way. But just her presence alone counts for
outweighs
equivalent of
all the
dragons.
other dragons.
Yeah.
The only one we know that can go toe to toe with Vhagar is pretty much Caraxes, because Daemon's a savage. Like the rest, maybe Vermithor, maybe Silverwing, but they're riderless. Another tactical mistake there. I actually made a thread about that on Twitter like a month ago or something like that. I'm like, I think this was one of Rhaenyra's biggest tactical flaws, was not trying to get any of her sons to ride Vermithor or Silverwing. They're sitting right there. They're just about as big as Vhagar. They are huge. They are fierce. I understand why she went for the dragon egg route, and she wanted to make sure her sons really seemed more Targaryen rather than strongish. I get it. But it was a bad tactical move to leave those dragons riderless, knowing that at some point Otto is going to come for you.
Yeah, they sort of panned over to Rhaena when they talked about these riderless dragons for a second. The camera fixed on her. I noticed
Yeah.
that.
I was like,
Yeah,
yeah, oh, yeah, good point.
they really could, recoup some of that advantage if they did claim some of these large unclaimed dragons. That would be pretty significant. It seems like they need to do. Speaking of the Greyjoys again, they need to do something like that. They need to go. There's only one Vagar, so strike. In a lot of different places.
Mhm.
Vagar can't possibly be there, especially if they need to leave Vagar defending the capital. And they can just go everywhere else. And they don't have to attack. They can do the thing they did with the Kingsguard. Be like, hey, what side are you on? My dragon's right here.
Yeah.
Decide carefully and then move on and win a bunch of allies that way. Just intimidate them over or just remind them and allow them to save some dignity. They can be like, oh yeah, we're gonna support you all along. I mean, never any doubt. I'm glad for the personal visit, though. It really, we're really honored by your presence. But yeah, you never had anything to worry about, bro. So
Always on
that
your
would
side.
be how they do that with the conventions, upholding their, all the manners of the nobility. That could have been, that's one way they could plan to do it.
Mhm.
Doesn't sound like that is what they're gonna do. But
No, not even a
no.
little bit. And Damon again tries to suggest kind of that way where he's like, we need to take decisive action. He's like, we need to take Harrenhal. Harrenhal comes up a lot during the rest of the series, so get used to that place. It wants to steal it from Lara Strong. Quite clearly, Damon knows that it would be nothing to take it because it's never anything to take it. You can knock over Harrenhal with a broom at this point.
Oh, it's simple, Simon. Yeah.
Just take Harrenhal, no big deal. As long as you got the dragons, things work out. But Rhaenyra again shuts him down, and you see that they have Matt Smith playing him in a very interesting way that as the episode goes, he continually tilts his head down and he's kind of glaring up from his eyes and he's like putting a lot of folds into his forehead. So he is just getting just like in the background more and more furious. And then it only gets worse as we get to the Causeway scene. Hey, we're back to that one again. Otto shows up again with terms. Rhaenyra jumps on Cyrax and goes behind them. The biggest thing here was that Alicent sent the little piece of paper from Nynaeve's book that Rhaenyra had torn out like 10 years ago at this point, maybe longer.
Yeah, longer at this point. That was episode 1, so there was I guess it's 20 years.
Yeah, it's been quite a while.
Yeah, because we had a 10-year jump, a 6-year jump, we had like a 3-year jump, and then many month jumps. So yeah, that's a while. That was a pretty cool move there on Alicent's part. I mean, she didn't mean it cynically. She really did mean let's
Otto
not
meant
fight.
it cynically though.
Yeah, but he did time it well. He was like, once she got up in his face and threw his pin away, he's like, "You're gonna throw my hand pin away. I got this for you." Like
Emotional damage. Here you go.
Yeah, it was very unexpected. It was Aikido. It was like, you think I'm gonna expect me to fire back, but no, I've got this soft emotional response for you that's got nothing to do with me. It's from my daughter.
How classic of Otto to use his
done.
daughter's genuine emotions as a tool for himself. Just classic.
That would be incredible. Otto. Incredible if we find out she had nothing to do with that.
If he stole it? Oh man.
That doesn't seem like he would know about that, but still.
He doesn't really understand emotions except how to use them. The other major thing here that Damon had some really good lines. He said, "I would rather feed my sons to the dragons than have them carry shields and cups for your drunken usurper cunt of a king." Great line right there. Also that he wants to he says, I can give the queen our answer right now, and I stuff this letter and the hand's limp cock into his throat and send him back to King's Landing. It's like Damon wants to kill Otto, and I think it's important to remember that he very clearly thinks that Viserys was murdered, probably by Otto. So it's not just that he hates Otto. He thinks this is the killer of his brother, the murderer standing in front of him, telling him to cool his jets. So this really sends.
He's always hated and thought was coming.
But this is at another level. Damon basically loses it here. He unsheathes his sword. He's almost ready to charge. Only Rhaenyra holds him back. But there's a blood fury in him at this point. There's no stopping the rage train.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty cool. They did a lot of the similar shots to the episode 2 with Damon and Otto facing down there, where there's a lot less at stake. It's definitely just Damon's pride is really the only thing in play there, and
Yeah.
all these other factors really aren't going on at all. And of course, Rhaenyra is on his side rather than being the one that talks him down. And but obviously there's a lot in common, like where Sunfire lands. I think we talked about that already.
Sure. Yeah.
But
Exactly the same shot.
she also, the way she walks right through them this time it was a real boss move. The other time it was like, well, she's just walking past her allies. This time she's walking right through her enemies. And they,
impressive.
They're not, of course, they're not going to do anything because they're envoys and Cyrax is right there. But it's still has to do it. It's still kind of
impressive.
Moment. Yeah, she doesn't flinch. She's really, she is just not intimidated easily. I think we've seen that. Like talking about when Damon comes after her, she's more like concerned about why he did it than the fact that he did it. She's like, you didn't know, did you?
Yeah.
She's just like rubbing her throat, like, "Ow, that kind of hurt." But she doesn't. She's like, "Wow, my husband just tried to strangle me."
She's more like him about it afterwards. She's like, "He didn't tell you?" Weird.
No.
Yeah. Let's go right totally to that scene, because the Causeway thing is just kind of like mostly Damon's the highlight there. So Damon again makes the claim that they should just have to use the dragons. Rhaenyra is like, well, I've studied the histories. I know what happens when dragons go to war and everybody dies. And Damon's like, well, what are you gonna do? Like, they have declared war. The war is here. And then they send everyone away and they get into an argument where basically, so it goes, does the promise of war excite you? She says to Damon, accusing him of just wanting to fight somebody. And doesn't care who. The fact that Otto's on the other side of it is enough for him to want to burn the realm down, which is probably pretty true. And then she comes back and he says, aren't you angry? They stole this from me. She's like, yeah, I'm angry, but should I declare war because of that? And he says, no, because it's your duty to crush rebellions. And then she brings up the Song of Ice and Fire. And I've never seen Matt Smith look this betrayed.
It was great acting. Like, it's really he was so good. The range of, he had like every emotion in this episode. Like you said, betrayed, angry, sad, guilty, like murderous, total grief, the caged animal thing, and then whatever was going on with the dragon Vermithor scene. I don't know what emotion that was, but it was something else. I don't know. There may not be a word for that one. Singing, Damon.
Yeah.
Singing isn't an emotion, but
ambitious, I guess.
Just bloodthirsty Damon. Yeah. So. Yeah, he did. You're right. It was the things to do with his brother, like his brother not telling him something. Yeah, that's the moment that's when he goes for it, and he's like, look, he's mad about that. You're right. It's a betrayal, I think, is the best choice of words there. And it's keeping her from focused on this bottom line of war.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, screw the dreams. The dragons, the dragons, man. We've been waiting. That line was amazing. That line was one of the first lines in any of the trailers back in like May. And we got it near the end of the last episode. That's pretty cool. Wasn't expecting it to be so far in, but we did kind of guess that it would have to do with them talking about the Song of Ice and Fire.
Sure.
Once we learned that was a thing. So, and it did make sense that he hadn't been told, because
did that
there was no indication of it.
That got under his collar. Rhaenyra starts talking about it. And the thing, I went back to find the exact moment where Damon snaps, and it's after Rhaenyra says, Viserys told me when he made me the heir, and that's when he goes for his throat.
Yeah, his
and
hand
he's like,
just shoots out. Yeah,
my brother was a slave to his omen's importance, anything to make his feckless rule appear to have purpose. So clearly, Damon's aware that Viserys was a dreamer, or talked about dreams a lot. I mean, everyone seemed to know that about them. That's how you can manipulate him. Apparently Damon's not himself, and this feels total betrayal that Rhaenyra is told this big underlying secret, an oath she had to swear. he didn't have to swear an oath. There was no oath there. It was just assumed he would be heir. And I think that's the kind of the final straw there, that after everything that he feels like he did for Viserys and the rage he's feeling at his death, it's like this one last undercut of him that Viserys was never serious about him being heir, that he didn't trust him with this. And I'm thinking that's what happened. It was just like,
I totally agree. Yeah.
Otherwise, it's it does it does come out of nowhere. I would not expect on an everyday basis Dame to go around choking Rhaenyra, but they've clearly shown that this is the most emotionally unstable they've made him the entire season, maybe his entire life. Everything happened to him today, which is not to excuse Damon. Don't choke people. Don't hurt your wife. Like, terrible thing. He's in the wrong, but they wanted to at least make it feel understandable why he did something so extreme in this moment.
Yeah, I don't know that she forgave him, but she didn't really have a big problem with it. She definitely didn't react like, oh my God. She didn't act like someone who had been betrayed, or like, I think she kind of understood. Like, violence is more a part of their world. They're both like really passionate people, him so even more. And yeah, I agree. It's not an excuse, like, but because in the real world, it would be pretty inexcusable. But she didn't react like that. She didn't react like, oh my God, I can't forgive you. She was just like, let's move on. Like, she didn't even talk to her. She didn't even really address it. She, like we said a minute ago, she was more concerned with
that he didn't know. She's like, what?
That he didn't know. Like,
how did you not know this?
Yeah, it's a callback to him being upset that he was never named Hand. You know, it's like he definitely was upset that he wasn't included, that he
didn't have Viserys' trust. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's what it was. Like, wow, he never trusted me with his secrets this whole time. That is a gut punch for Damon. It's not Rhaenyra's fault.
No,
which is why it's like, hey, don't strangle your wife, man. But I also think she, even for a second, didn't think he was gonna go really far with it. You kind of get the sense that he wasn't like super choking her, like, you know, it's still not, it sounds like I'm making excuses, but like, she wasn't even fighting him. She was just like, what are you doing, man? Like, chill out, you know.
Like, knock it off.
It was like she was more just trying to get a hold of the situation, like, than having any sense of panic. She wasn't worried, despite the fact that he's choking her. She's just like, I'm still in control here.
Yeah,
it's like she's very unintimidated. Like, I like that about her a lot. She's super tough. Like, she didn't even sit down for her birth there. That was incredibly boss. Like, yeah.
And it kind of works with the thing earlier about how Damon tried to show Jace how to rule. And it's like, this is how you command respect. And he tries the same thing on her, and it doesn't work. Where she is kind of... I'm sure they're going to have words about this. It's going to come up later that she choked him. I mean, that he choked her. But she didn't let Damon intimidate her the way that he did to the Kingsguard. That his method doesn't always work. That it only works if the person's afraid of you. And I don't think she's afraid of Damon, and probably will punish him later.
You're right. That's a great point. And what's interesting about him is that he is consistently doesn't answer accusations. When someone accuses him of something, he does not respond to it. He either fires back or just shifts the subject or whatever. He does not say, I didn't do that, or I don't deserve this, or he just doesn't respond to accusations. That's his standard play. It's very interesting. He's just like, kind of shows, it's a very consistent part of his character, how he's always on the attack, even with words.
I'm also wondering,
that's interesting.
I'm also wondering if this is a book spoiler, who knows how they're going to do it. But eventually Damon and Rhaenyra kind of sort of go through a pseudo divorce at a certain point. And I'm wondering if this is like the moment that starts it. Where it's like, you hurt me, Damon. Like, I can't trust you, or that kind of thing. Or this is where emotionally the two of them start splitting, because clearly they're splitting hard on what they're going to do with this war, where Rhaenyra is preaching peace and talking about how we need to save the realm for the people. And Damon's like, fuck the people. Like, this is about your throne. And that's the kind of thing that can tear apart a marriage. that kind
Very
of
different values.
drastic,
Yeah.
like a very different values, and also that he choked her. That's not going to go away.
Mhm.
Even if she's not
Even if
intimidated
she
by
wasn't
him.
scared, she's
Yeah,
still like, that's unacceptable. Yeah.
totally unacceptable. Well, they call it, what did they call it with Jaehaerys and Alysanne? They went through it wasn't troubles, it was something.
The quarrels.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the quarrels. They go through a quarrel.
The first and second quarrels. Yeah.
Yeah, where they basically left Alysanne
Yeah, like
left.
that's the thing. So they can just like, hey, look, our grandparents had quarrels. We can have quarrels.
Yeah, really fucked up with Damon, but they put a lot of effort into making sure it made sense in the episode.
She's just kind of she's just like pragmatic about it. She's like, yeah, I married a guy who cuts heads off and murders his ex-wife. I gotta expect a choking.
Oh, do you think she knows that Rhea Royce was murdered? She has to assume, right?
I guess she's not sure, but I don't know that she would care. I remember what she said to him at episode 5. Anyway, she's like, yeah, just carry me off, kill
Yeah. Kill everyone here.
carry me off and marry me if that's what you want to do. So. Yeah,
Damon's not the kind of guy you marry and fix, unfortunately. You're kind of dealing with the package there.
She's like, oh no, I'm not trying to dampen his flame. I'm trying to aim it.
That's right. That's basic. I think that's one of the reasons that Damon's so frustrated with her, is that I think the two of them understood that the marriage is about that they do care for each other, but that Damon is a particular kind of person. He's the kind of guy that you marry when you want to fight for your throne. Like, I think that's been an understanding the last 6 years, that if this happened, Damon's charging with Caraxes to defend her and her children. And he's like, you're not letting me do the thing that we agreed we're gonna do, even though she has good reasons.
It's like, you married a sword. Why don't you use your sword? Yeah. You
really,
married a dragon.
I can imagine with everything lumped onto it, that was incredibly, incredibly frustrating for him.
Yeah, you're probably right.
So we get to Corlys is back. He's back in the saddle. He's using a cane, shades of Viserys. A lot of canes being used in this one. He finally... we kind of skipped over this. Him and Rhaenys have this big conversation, and after he learns that Vaemond died for ambition, Corlys is like, I'm done with ambition. Like, it's not worth it. It's killed our kids. It's killed my brother. Like, I'm done. And Rhaenys actually turns him around and says, we can't back down. We can't have a quiet life. The die is cast at this point. We're in this war no matter what. The only way to protect our grandkids and Driftmark going forward is we have to back Rhaenyra. And Corlys is like, you're always right, Eve Best. Why are you always right?
Darn you, Eve Best, and your rightness.
I thought it was really interesting that it was Vaemond. That was the thing that really got him. He's like, I'm done. I lost my brother to ambition. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, I think he may have already been feeling that way, and that was just like got him started on the topic. But yeah, it did seem. Also, he didn't seem very surprised, and he also didn't seem like, oh well.
He's like, of course he did.
He does have a big mouth, and that's the same one that was yelling about Damon at the Stepstones about accusing him of mutiny. He's like, brother, shut up, that's mutiny. So he just kind of, he's always been like that. But it was. He had a lot of time to laid up there, sick and wounded, to think about all that, to reflect. And
6 years he left Rhaenys, which she says with a lot of betrayal. Actually, the line that she said was really good. He said, I had no other place to turn. I lost everything. And she fires back, we lost, Corlys. We
lost. Yeah.
And it's like, really he really was a shithead right there.
You're supposed to go through that with your wife, man. Yeah. Really, really true.
Not great. But Corlys steps up. He goes back to the council. He confirms that they're on Rhaenyra's side the whole way. And as you talked about, that he has closed the Stepstones, fully conquered, left a garrison. They own the Narrow Sea. They have the mightiest navy. They're expecting to smash apart the Lannisters. And it's like, at this point, this is the high point before the fall. It's like, all right, things are going good. They got a plan. They're going to go get the Starks. They might get the Tullys. They're going to go get the Aarons and the Baratheons. They have Corlys. They have Rhaenys. All right. I'm feeling good about Team Black here. And then Yeah. Classic maneuver. Just like I said, where they gave Luke a lot of characterization only to kill him, they only raise your hopes to dash them. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think the
They
moment
do that.
that I knew it was going to happen and I still didn't want to was when Rhaenys steps forward and says, "Oh, don't worry, I'll close the gullet. I'll go flying out with Meleese." I was like, "No, no, don't do that. You're supposed to go to Storm's End to talk to the Baratheons." And I think this is Rhaenyra's biggest mistake and the one that
Yeah.
really throws things into chaos. It's the Jace suggests that they should go, him and Luke, on Dragonback to go deliver the messages and act as envoys to get the allies. And boy, was that a terrible idea. Not only because of what happens, just like on its face of it. What a bad idea.
Yeah, if someone had suggested that instead, someone should have had that idea. But like, hey, what about me? I could like, what about her? Shouldn't she do that? And like, oh yeah, that's the.
Rhaenys, before you do the thing with the gullet, just head down to Storm's End. They literally worship you. They think you're the queen who never was. Like, they toast your name. Go make sure Boros is on our side. And this is kind of Rhaenyra's overconfidence that she literally does send Jace. She sends Luke to Storm's End. The implication is that she thinks it's the easy job. She thinks it'll be easier than going to the Vale and to Winterfell. She gives that to Jace. She's like, Luke, you can handle this. No big deal. And I that's kind of the explanation, but boy, is it an oversight on her part. These kids should never have gone because they're kids. They, if anything bad comes up, like they're not going to be able to solve it because they don't have the skills. They haven't been taught to do this. They're not diplomats. They haven't held court or anything like that. This is why you don't send them. Anything goes wrong, boy, you better hope that those guys just instantly say, you know what, you're right. My grandfather or my father did swear an oath. I'm on board. Team Rhaenyra all the way. If they go, I don't know about this one. I got a pretty good letter from Otto Hightower. They're just going to be sitting there just going like, oh, that sucks.
That sucks.
That's kind of it, you know?
Yeah. I don't mind sending Jace as much. He seems serious and capable. I think Luke, like they consistently showed that Luke was a little off isn't the right word because that's mean, but definitely not cut out for this sort of thing.
Mm.
So, and I definitely agree with you that they way took Storm's End for granted in a number of ways. And even if sending Luke wasn't a mistake, sending Rhaenys would have been better. Even
yeah. No matter what you think of Boros, if Boros is your best friend, you have her, send her.
Not to mention, we earlier mentioned the overlooked Joffrey marriage option to one of the daughters. That
was the part that was a little crazy to me. That so Rhaenyra gives them orders to go as envoys, not as warriors. She gives them letters, tells them to go out. Luke gets the Storm End. Aemond's already beaten them there, and Boros can't read, which I thought was a fun thing that they kept going. The Maester has to go up and read the letter and whisper it to Boros. Didn't looked like a fairly long letter. The Maester wasn't talking that long, but the message that gets communicated to Boros is that to remind him of his oath, and as Rhaenyra said, to remind him what happens if he does not do anything. And Boros rightly says, "This is all you got?" She didn't offer a marriage pact with Joffrey or Viserys or Aegon. And you know what?
There's no carrot.
Boros is right. That was a crazy thing to do. And especially not to tell Luke, God help him, like, if worst comes to worst, offer Joffrey. Like, it'll be years before it happens. We need the alliance. You need to be able to do this. And the only question I had there was, do you think the Maester screwed them? Did he not read the whole letter?
I wondered about that. I don't think they gave much evidence of that here. It would be like a little hard to set that up. I did wonder about that, from the source, original from Fire and Blood, whether that was possible, because it did the way it plays out a little differently, the way it's described. They left a little more room for it in the book, but it's a little too convoluted here, the way they portrayed it, I think, for that in this spot. But yeah, it is really funny. I like how they kept that. They kept a lot of the exact dialogue, both in some of the painted table scenes and from this scene in particular with that, and showed the 4 storms, the daughters of
Yeah.
Lord Boros. That was cool. They're all a little more important than people might think. They're at least one more of them will be. So we'll see how they play that.
And I guess I'm guessing there's no conspiracy there because it does square with what Rhaenyra said earlier, that she didn't think she had to do anything to get Boros to do it. Her expectation was he's going to throw you a feast when you show up. He's going to be so happy to see you. No big deal. I don't even need to give you like a backup plan. There's no need. Boros will never betray me, which is, yeah, as we talked about at length, a huge mistake there.
Not quite.
And Jace actually, someone in the chat said that, yes, Jace actually does get negotiate marriage pacts on his way. So
The veil, yeah.
Yeah, Luke is just in over his head. He never should have gone.
Too young, not.
Yeah.
He said it himself. He doesn't want to be a lord, No.
Oh, 2 super chats I missed. Callista Cross, $5. Hey Aziz, happy to see you both live stream together. Yeah, it's always a good time to hang out with Aziz and talk some Song of Ice and Fire. And $20 from Maura Lee, just the love of show and support. Interesting episode. Wow, definitely interesting. And I think we're gonna get to the most interesting part here, and that is Aemond and Luke. Woof, woof, woof.
Angry girl.
That is that scene. This whole scene goes a little crazy. Because as far as Fire and Blood is concerned, Luke's death is that Aemond is basically a mad dog for him. That he just shows up and he's trying to kill him as soon as he walks in, and as soon as he walks out the door, he's on Vhagar and he just wants to kill the kid for taking out his eye. But what we get in the episode is actually that Aemond in no way was trying to kill him. He wanted to take out his eye. I'm not saying he had good intentions for Luke Velaryon. He wanted him to take out his eye with a dagger, like personally do it. What a crazy ask. And he definitely wants to hurt him, but he's not trying to kill him.
Yeah, it's definitely very nuanced, because you're right. He seems to have a very hardline rule. He's like, you took my eye, I want your eye. I want you to feel exactly what I'm feeling. I want you to go through the life the way I go through life. There's some kind of sense of balance there that he's aiming for. It would not be achieved by straight up killing him. But there's also this element of reckless teenager just getting a fast car for the first time, or a motorbike, or something like an off-road vehicle that they really shouldn't have, except it's way bigger than that. And he's just messing around, trying to bully his younger nephew. And I think that's all he was trying to do. I think he was just trying to bully him and intimidate him. He I don't know that Aemond even thought that a war would break out at this point. Maybe he does now.
Well,
there's a lot of things going through his head. He's not, since he's not a total psycho like the book version seems to be, he's realizing what this means, what has happened. He's like, I just effectively killed an envoy. I'm a kinslayer. Probably there's no turning back now. This is probably definitely going to be a war at this point. They're going to want revenge, whatever. So, but he also seemed to maybe feel some guilt there. Like his face kind of showed maybe remorse or sadness. It's not entirely clear, but did you see that?
Yeah, totally. And they talked about this after the episode, and some people in chat are talking about they don't believe that Aemond wasn't trying to kill him. Ryan Comble in the after the episode says this. That he was bullying him, he was chasing him, he wanted Luke to feel like he had no choice, but Aemond was not trying to kill him. It was like the last vestiges of the little boy in Aemond. And Ewan, I forget his last name, says that he feels hatred for Luke, but it's subconscious versus conscious. And what he ends up doing is kind of this domino effect, that he is trying to terrify Luke. He is trying to bully him. He's chasing him around, but he at no point is trying to get Vhagar to kill him. He just wants to scare Luke. But it's kind of one of those things that you see in a lot of TV shows and movies and stuff like that. It's like, well, why'd you bring a gun? It's like, I just wanted to scare him. It's like, well, you did bring a gun though. Surely it came to your attention that you may accidentally shoot the gun, or in this case, shoot Vhagar at Luke. So I think there's definitely of two minds there. That he he knows he can't kill Luke. He knows it's going to start a war that his mother has said she doesn't want, and he is good boy Aemond, and he doesn't want to disagree with his mother. But on the other side of him, he's just so angry after all these years at Luke in particular.
Yeah, you're right. There is that anger, and that gets back to what we were discussing with the dragons feeling the intenser subconscious emotions without the nuance that goes behind them, or without the restraint that's included with that. So I think Vhagar maybe reads this as more serious. It doesn't see it as taunting or bullying, and then neither does Arax. And then Arax, being a dragon,
Right.
back,
fights for its
and
life.
then Vhagar's just in it at that point. Then Aemond has no control. Yeah, so both of them were, well, it's not Luke's fault at all. Aemond had no idea what he was doing. I mean, he wasn't like a lot of this generation and the previous generation. They weren't educated even on their dragons. Like he says, I studied philosophy and history and the blade, but
Yeah.
but he wasn't like taught, all that well about dragon riding, apparently, because the dragon keepers taught them some things, but I don't know. They never handled Vhagar. Vhagar lived elsewhere. So no, I guess some of these, either he didn't listen to these lessons, or he didn't get them because he didn't grow up with the dragon. He didn't get one until he was older, or some combination of those two things, or his rage overwhelmed that. But I think the most interesting part is idea that the dragon picks up on that subconscious vibe, and that drives a lot of this.
I think that's exactly right. And they put a lot of effort into this episode to making sure that we understood that the dragons react to their riders, especially their strong emotions. Daemon's basically able to control Caraxes with his emotions at this point, but Rhaenyra is like surprised at how much Syrax does it to her, and Vhagar is, I think, feeling the subconscious rage that Aemond has, that one part of him definitely wants to kill Luke, and the other part definitely knows he can't. But Vhagar's listening to the emotional side, the anger that he's feeling, the joy that he's having as he's trying to attack him and Arax. And I think that's what Vhagar really feeds off of. They also had the thing, like you said, where Arax blew some fire at Vhagar, and that pissed her off. But I think she's definitely feeling she's not listening to Aemon's brain, she's listening to his heart, and his heart says kill him, and that's why she does it.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Yeah, that she's listening to his wants and not his
thoughts. Yeah,
yeah.
Which just makes it even more impressive that that Daemon's basically able to manipulate Caraxes like he's controlling him.
That's some experience.
Yeah, but also that Vhagar is a very willful, powerful dragon. Like even Viserys was scared of Balerion, even though that's his dragon. He's like, I didn't like Balerion very much. That dragon was a little scary, and he talked about that. I think like episode 1, that like it's an illusion that they control the dragons, that they don't really. And I think you see that here. They have minds of their own.
Yeah, they just have. A lot of times they just play with it, aren't a problem, because if you have an ordered mind, a disciplined mind, if you're not having a lot of chaotic thoughts, it'll probably be okay. Given this model that we're outlining here anyway. One like Laena seems to have had big troubles with Vhagar because she led a peaceful life. Even though she kind of wanted to not lead a peaceful life, she never did not lead a peaceful life. So she just got to go around and show Vhagar off and do air shows and things like that. So Vhagar was probably fine with that. So Vhagar probably wasn't like all aggressive, and it was harder to get her to become violent. She hadn't been so for so long. But now she's had Aemond years with his anger, his unsettled, unresolved feelings there, and all this, him knowing that his family is heading towards the brink, heading towards possible conflict, which will give him a lot of anxiety, or at least him on edge. And Vhagar would feel that too, which she wouldn't have felt with Laena, or maybe with any rider she's ever had before.
Yeah, and I think Laena's a great point, because Vhagar won't listen to Aemond, and I think maybe it's like an amount of respect for him, because even when Laena is telling Vhagar to murder her, to, Dracarys and breathe fire on her, Vhagar goes through with it, even though she knows what it's doing and she understands it's what Lena really wants. She's not listening to Aemond, and I think again, going back to the idea of Caraxes, I think this really shows that Vhagar is a destructive force, but she's really a chaotic one at this point. And I wonder how much of what she does later in Fire and Blood, particularly with Aemon, like he just, okay, so book spoilers, not sure how they're going to depict this, but he basically goes on a giant killing spree throughout the Riverlands. And you wonder, looking at this scene, how much of that he's in control of at a certain point. If Vhagar is just kind of doing it and feeding on his id rather than him really intending to do that.
Yeah, like it's partly he does, but he's not necessarily fully picking his targets. He's just the way they can blend the chaos of his, because it doesn't seem to, it always read kind of odd, not odd, but very thoughtless, which works for psycho version of Aemon kind of, and this more thoughtful, intelligent, nuanced version of Aemon that might not work as well. So, or maybe he just descends into madness. That's
Maybe.
another thing that could happen. It just manifests more, something like that. There's something else that could happen. Maybe he takes a blow to the head. Maybe Alice Rivers messes him up. Who knows?
The old god's getting his head at Harrenhal or something like that.
Yeah, something changes him. That sapphire's infected. It's got a soul and it's got a devil.
Oh yeah, the sapphire too. That was a really cool effect.
That looked awesome. Didn't it look vaguely serpentine? Like there was a vague hint of a pupil in there, but also it was like White Walker vibe with dragon vibe. That was it was awesome. That did not disappoint. I was like, oh, we get to, because we knew we were going to get to see it from the trailer. You could, he's like pulling it off.
Yeah.
You're like, oh,
there it is. I thought they were going to go with the eye
Yeah,
patch the whole time. I was like, maybe they just didn't bother with it. Like they didn't bother with the purple contacts for most of the Targaryens, but no, they spent the money on this one. They gave him his sapphire eye, old Cinean star eyes, as it were.
There. Yeah, and Viserion. Yeah.
It also
V dragons. Got to watch out for those V dragons.
That's true.
So many of them.
It also goes back to, I think, what Ryan Condal said after the episode, that that this is the last vestiges of a little boy in Aemon. I think that makes sense because while Aemond is a character who has prepared for war, and he studied the histories and philosophy and the sword, and he beat up Kristen Cole in the training yard for like 6 years straight getting ready to fight Luke. It's a very different thing to think you want something and then to actually do it. Like, Aemond's never killed anybody before, as far as we know. He's never lit anybody on fire. He's never swung a sword really to kill. And now he's having to live with the consequences of that. And this could be the breaking point for him, but also, as we talked about, he knows consciously, like, this was all fun and games. Like, there's always a way back. Like, Aegon crowned himself, he can uncrown himself. Maybe Rhaenyra can surrender. He's like, oh shit, I didn't mean to do this. Like, he wants to hurt Luke, but he doesn't want to start the war. And I think that's the reason that he's on Vhagar screaming, no, no, no. And he looks like he's crying a little bit. He's like, oh, we're all screwed now. I can't believe that just happened.
It did kind of look like he was crying. It's ambiguous because there's already so much water in his face from the storm, but he did have like the kind of face that could be contorted as if it's crying. And you're right, it is like the kill the boy recurring theme that comes up in the Song of Ice and Fire. That it's kind of happening here in a very tragic way, very harsh. And I lost what I was going to say here. Right, as well, that maybe, when we're talking about what could like push him towards madness a bit, it might be the weight of realizing that all this happening because of him, or could be he could take some of that to heart. Like, if it wasn't for me, maybe this war would have been avoided.
Sure.
He's the one that did the thing that truly couldn't be forgiven. At least it looks that way. If they knew it was an accident, it might be different. But there's no way they'll know, and they would never believe him.
Right, absolutely not.
His own family might not believe him when he's like, I really didn't mean to. They're like, yeah, sure.
And also we know that I don't think he was prepared to do this because he had the opportunity to do this to Aegon, who he legitimately hates and thinks is a shithead. And he could have usurped the throne right there and taken it for himself, and Aemond couldn't bring himself to do it. I mean, he hates Luke, but I think he hates his brother even more because he knows that Aegon was the ringleader behind all the bullying that went on with him. And he knows exactly who he is and how bad a king he is. And he really was tempted in that moment. And he's like, I can't do it. It's not the right thing to do, even though emotionally I feel like I want to. And yeah, this is gonna be a real turning point for Aemond, and I wonder how much of it is going to be him playing a character from here on out, because he's clearly conflicted. But book Fire and Blood Aemond is not conflicted by what he's doing. He is truly just a murdering psychopath. But that doesn't seem to be who he is here.
We get to slowly move into that, or is it just going to be a different characterization all the way through? I wonder, or is it just going to be like so far? Because a lot of the things he's done so far, you could see how the histories would say. Like the history could easily just say, "This is he did this." It doesn't have to be the show version is allowed to be more nuanced because no one else is a witness to what happened.
Sure,
but the TV cameras, and so it would be it's works that the Maesterly version says Aemond was aiming to kill him.
Yeah,
that fits. So to this point, it's not.
He'll never say he didn't want to. He's gonna have to say I meant to. Because it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that's true. He could just like lean into it, be like, yeah, I'll be the monster they think I am. Make them think I'm this dangerous. Yeah, fully just. Yep. Well, yeah, I did it.
He definitely seems to be cosplaying Damon, at least. So there's definitely a sense that he's trying to be somebody that he's not underneath.
Or is he cosplaying Damon and Euron? Or
yeah, he's doing both a little bit at the same time. He's doing a lot of cosplays. It's a very nuanced cosplay that he's pulling off.
Euron and a little White Walker throw in with the eyeball there.
It will be interesting to see where this goes in the future. I also wonder, this is kind of a long-term thing, if he finds out about Larys and Alicent. Because there is that moment in Fire and Blood where I'm not going to drop the exact spoiler to it, but Aemond basically says, like, I don't trust Larys Strong. I don't think he's on our side. I think he's doing something strange. And I'm wondering if the reason is that he finds out about like the foot thing and the way that he's blackmailing his mother. Because it seems like there's a lot of devotion here between him and Alicent. Like, he really is a mama's boy. And that would be the kind of thing that would probably make him change his mind on Larys.
Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that at all. That's a dynamic I hadn't considered. Yeah, you wonder what that would mean to him.
Probably not anything good. It would explain what he does.
Probably not anything good. Yeah. Especially with Larys being the one to maybe keep Aegon hidden and all that later.
Yeah.
They're all going to be so separated. That's going to be interesting too. They might get the wrong idea about each other's actions when they're not together to see and discuss it all out. When Aemond is out in the field and Alicent is still at King's Landing, and that will change their dynamic as well.
That was one of those things.
I'm really wondering about that with Kristen Cole when he's
definitely
when he's out there, whether he changes after he's promoted.
There's definitely going to be a real sense as the story goes on that this is something I've seen people like complaining about. It's like, oh, it's all happenstance and misunderstandings and stuff like that. It's like, that's basically the story of the Dance of the Dragons. It's a lot of misunderstandings and people in the wrong place at the wrong time, and the fact that they do get spread apart and they can't talk to each other really ends up being what drives the dance.
And a few people really pulling the strings to
make sure it happens, like Larys, yeah,
Larys and Otto for years being like this, the realm's going to go to war, and we don't do this, things like that. And of course, the initial sending of Alicent to hook up with Comfort Viserys was probably if you could undo one thing to stop all this, that might be the one.
There's a lot of off ramps on this one.
There are a lot of off ramps, but like that might be the simplest, cleanest. Just don't. Alicent and Viserys are never a thing, and it's all it all just maybe just works itself out. Maybe not. I guess some sort of dragon civil war was inevitable, perhaps, because of their internal factors and problematic methods of ruling and the nature of dragons and royalty and human history, all that
Things
stuff,
get
all of it.
They get crazy real fast. And of course, the end of the episode, Damon walks in to the painted table room, I guess, Great Hall, whatever, of Dragonstone, tells Rhaenyra that Luke is dead, and we see her kind of turn around with the fire burning behind her. And actually, I used that image for the thumbnail for this one, and there's a much harder look on her face than we've seen from Millie Alcock or Emma Darcy this entire time. There's a real sense of fury, and what Emma Darcy had to say after the episode was, what they said was, it moves the goalpost for suffering. You know, you lost your parents, your lover, you think you know grief. Losing Luke tells her that she knows nothing of grief. And that's sort of the feeling there. And there's been a lot of talk. So, whoa, what happened to your lights? Oh, you have the timing thing. That's right.
They're on a timer, yeah. They went green. It's ominous.
Oh my God, you went green. No.
Let me fix that.
There's something coming up probably in season 2, probably episode 1, called Blood and Cheese. If you want to know what it is, look it up. There's a lot of talk about if Rhaenyra actually ordered it or if Damon did it on his own. And boy, with that look that Rhaenyra threw to the camera and the way this season ends, I am not sure it was just Damon anymore.
Yeah, and Mazzaria's role in it all is really interesting too, because she's already got like a thing going with Otto, and it might look to her like Otto came after her right away instead of it being she doesn't necessarily know that it's Larys doing it on Alicent's behalf. It's Mazzaria is maybe hooked in enough to have figured out the difference, but it might just look like Otto's coming right for her. So she might be quick to back on with Team Damon, Team Rhaenyra with that. So yeah, I'm super curious as well. Who's going to be culpable for this extremely heinous act?
The thing that happens that we're all going to hate.
Yeah, we're
gonna
hate it. Another like morbid curiosity I have with it is what it's going to do to Helena, the dreamer. Like, what's that going to? First of all, is she going to see it coming?
She must see it coming.
Yes. Got to see it coming, right? You got to.
If
we were already looking for it. We were like, "Is the beast beneath the board? Is that it?" We were ready for that to be it. We're like, "It's a little obscure, but I could see the beast, the boards."
That's the thing with dreams; they can fit a lot of things.
Exactly. It's hard to dismiss things out of hand. So we were open to that. Now we're like, okay, well, that was
it's probably Bailey's, but it could be something else.
Probably, yeah, it could be something else. So we'll see. But we're surely not done with Helena's dreams. Maybe we only get 1 or 2 more, but I think we get several more. I'm guessing, but I think she still continues to be a Cassandra figure, or Patchface figure, where they just don't listen to her.
Maybe they'll listen to. I wonder if they'll start listening to her after this, after Blood and Cheese. If somebody finally listens and goes like, "Oh, you can see things."
She saw that coming. Oh my God, we should have been listening this all along.
I'm guessing Aemond.
Sarah only knew.
Aegon's out to lunch. Alicent or Aemond are my guesses on who figured it out. But yeah, there's a lot to look forward to. We got a lot of name drops for where we're gonna go next season. We're gonna see the Vale of Arryn again. We're gonna see Winterfell. Damon's going to the Riverlands to go treat with the lads and Grover Tully. I think that's one thing that I think people misunderstood about House of the Dragon season 1. This is a season-long prologue. Things are just getting started. Like, they are now going to expand locations drastically. All the kingdoms are going to get involved. We heard about Cregan Stark. We heard about the well, actually, it's a Lady of the Vale at this point, I believe, that's in charge. Grover Tully, the Blackwoods and Brackens that we saw are all coming back. They've been laying this all out, and now the show's really starting. And it's kind of like a Final Fantasy level of intro to this, where it's like we're 10 hours in and the story just started, and it's gonna kick off in a huge way.
Let's imagine if we had just stayed at Winterfell for all of season 1. And like Jon Snow goes for the wall at the end of season 1, and like the King's Party goes back down. Like imagine like that instead, or like they stayed there for 10 or 20 years instead of anything. Exactly, it's very different. It's super different. I mean, it's funny thing about a time jump. Hard to do because no one likes them. You're not like, yeah, time jump. It's not you have to do. It's like, well, I think we got to do a time jump, folks. Like they're writing it out, and they're like, we're gonna do a second time jump. They're like, oh damn.
Oh no, 3 time jumps. Oh no, what have we done?
3. What if we do one of them so it's really small and people will barely notice that one? So maybe it'll really only be like 2 time jumps, and they'll do the big one first, or the second one seems smaller by comparison. And so, yeah, they do all these things because unless you're like in a time travel show, no one looks forward to that. No one's like, yes, time jump. So it's cool that we're past that. It's the same thing with like a couple other shows that to get to where they wanted to be, they had to do some wonky stuff,
right?
Move it all around, or to do time jumps, or to do parallel storytelling where you're doing multiple timelines at once, like Westworld.
Oh yeah.
Multiple timelines at the same time, like The Witcher season 1, which didn't do that in season 2.
That was really confusing as someone that hadn't read those books. I was like, what's happening?
Yeah, exactly. Like, and so there's a lot of different shows where season 1 was their setup. So House of the Dragon was really strong even during this setup phase,
right,
which bodes well. On the other hand, it's going to be very different. It's going to be a very different style. There's going to be a lot less court intrigue and less family drama, and the conflict. Well, there'll still be plenty of conflict, which is the most important element probably. But it'll be, and a lot of it will be personal, like what kind of making decisions that involve lots of lives, right? Rather than just their personal pride and their emotions. Their decisions will have a lot bigger ripple effects across the rest of Westeros, as you said, because there'll be Starks and Lannisters and
they're all coming.
Whoever else, Stormlanders, whoever else, Valeman, whoever else is going to be involved. Yeah, it's pretty exciting to think about how much more is coming. And we guessed maybe there was a chance they would show Ace landing at Winterfell just to be like, Starks, y'all, Starks. But
I think they're saving that for hype for season 2. Well, I mean, obviously
trailers,
they are. Yeah.
Season 2 trailers. Yeah, we'll start with.
They're going to show Winterfell. You're going to see a top knot on a Stark looking guy. You're going to see ice. Everyone's going to lose their mind. Like,
might even say Pact of Ice and Fire. Be like, excuse me, Pact of what? What now? Hello?
Oh man, if that comes back, if the suggestion that Torrhen and Aegon made a pact when he surrendered, if that comes up, that would be really good synergy for how they started at episode 1. They go right back to it in season 2, episode 1. Ooh, that'd be good.
Pretty cool.
That'd be pretty good.
They should be hiring us as consultants too.
Hey, we're available now. The season's over. We don't got shit to do.
Yeah, we got plenty of time. I guess it sounds like they're already working on it, but yeah, obviously they haven't been at it for super long, but they are at it.
Yeah.
And that's good.
And I think this is going to be a lot more the Game of Thrones everybody knows. I think House of the Dragon probably unfairly trained the new audience to think that every episode is going to be like 6 months, 4 years, 5 years in between. It's going to be like day to day now. It's going to be very much what you're used to. Which I kind of missed, especially because I think the biggest criticism for season 1 is that I talked about this, that they gave Luke characterization just to kill him, and that happened like 5 times, and it happened a lot because they were skipping around so a lot. These secondary and minor characters that people love didn't really get the love that you wanted because there wasn't time. There's going to be time for it now. We're talking Bloody Ben, we're talking Black Alley, we're talking Red Rob Rivers, we're talking the lads, Roddy the Ruin, all these guys. They're going to have the time now to explore them before they abruptly kill them off because everybody dies in the Dance of the Dragons.
Everybody dies. Yeah. So yeah, but you're right. There's going to be a lot of characters people are going to like, and I can't wait to see them. Like I'm excited for the Dragon Seeds. I mean, come on.
Ooh, yeah.
Sweet. It's going to be so cool. The Battle of the Gullet, like, whoa, unbelievable. The effects and the trauma afterwards, and all the things it sets up and the conversations of like, that's what war is like, like imagine that being your first battle, because that's what it's going to be like for someone like Jace to be like, that's your first ever battle, like, well, for him I guess it's a little different, but for like Nettles and Hammer and Ulf and the people who actually come back from it.
Oh man, the chaos of the claiming of the dragons episode is just going to be amazing. So many people die trying to do that. An absurd amount of people die trying to jump on those dragon backs. Like, yeah, it's gonna be great.
They're gonna have fun with that. They're gonna be like, "Ooh, we're allowed to get crazy with this. This is like in the text. We don't have to like play this up for effect. It's already wild and gory and fun." Yeah, they're gonna have some people losing limbs, some baked individuals. Some yeah, it's gonna be fun.
It should be a really good one. And I think somebody in the chat made this point that they turned 30 pages of Fire and Blood into an entire season, which is really impressive. Now we have like 200 pages to go for 3 seasons, so they are going to be dense.
So it was at the end of episode 8, right, when Viserys goes to sleep for the last time. Fire and Blood, I counted it. It's 47 sentences. Him going to sleep for it declares the next section, the dying of the dragons, right? So it's like that's how much time before it basically goes into the war.
Yeah.
So yeah, they got 2 episodes out of that.
Kind of incredible.
But it didn't feel stretched out. It was good. Yeah. It was like, yeah, it was treated well and hit the emotional beats, extremely well. And
anything, they were taking those sentences and they were just stretching them out to put them on the page, because there was not a lot there. Like episode 1 was 5 sentences, I think that was it, and they turned that into a pretty incredible opening to the series. I think you can understand why George is said in his blog that he thinks they need another season. They might not be wrong. He might not be wrong on that one. Although, to be fair, a lot of those pages are waffling about which version is true. They don't have to do that. They don't have to tell 3 versions of the same story, or 4 versions in some cases. So it's going to be whatever the page count is, like cut it in a third, and that's going to be the actual length of the rest of the series, but it's still quite a lot. So you can understand why George wants them to maybe push for another season, maybe get into the Regency, that kind of thing.
Well, and also we need room for things like appearances by every actor's favorite pop star to get in there.
It's just gonna be Ed Sheeran over and over again.
Yeah, I actually didn't mind that scene. I thought it was fine, but it is yeah, it was fine. Like, it was fine. He acted okay. It was like the other dialogue was pretty good.
People only complain because they didn't recognize the rest of the band members of Coldplay when they were in the Red Wedding. They just recognized Ed Sheeran. That was the problem.
There were a lot of musicians did cameos over the years in that show. So many,
and also It's Always Sunny, like Rob McElhaney and I think a couple of the others showed up during this. Just nobody recognized them.
Noah Syndergaard from he's no longer a New York Met, but he was a Met at the time, and the guys from Mastodon were like wildlings that turned into White Walkers.
I think it's that people just don't like Ed Sheeran, and I think that was the problem. They recognized him, they knew who he was, and they were like, ugh, I hate that.
It's like how Twitter blows up at certain decisions that really don't affect the plot. They don't like certain characterizations. It was like, yo, this character would never have done this. Like, the story's the same though. Like, it's just they added some flavor.
Yeah.
In some cases it does change it, but like, so I'm referring to the times when it doesn't.
Sure.
People complain about that anyway.
Rip Aegon's mustache. Oh my god, I'm so happy they didn't put that in. The stupid, crazy little mustache that he had in the artwork.
Oh,
actually, Viserys too. They got rid of his mustache, that big bushy thing. He did not look good. It was like a Joe Magician level of mustache. Not a good look. It doesn't work. Also, I love that people were freaking out. Oh, I wanted to see Sunfire fly around the dragon pit. I was like, all right. You saw Meleys fly around it. It was like, oh no, they went for spectacle. That was the whole reason for the dragon pit thing. I'm like, isn't Sunfire flying around in the sky spectacle? Like, it's the same thing, right?
It's totally exactly. It's
It's
identical.
it's a dragon flying around and it looks cool. That's the point of both of them. Whichever one you choose is fine, I guess. I probably just got a bunch of people mad at me. I did not care to see. We're gonna see Sunfire in all his glory late next season doing crazy things. So don't worry that you missed out on him flying around on the dragon pit. Like that's the low point of Sunfire's life.
Sunfire gonna have some action.
Oh,
Sure.
is he ever? Oh, good question from Guilty Undertaker. Is Patty Considine winning that Emmy? Yes. Even if HBO wasn't going to buy it for him, yes, he is.
I think a lot of groundwork that often goes into an award seems to have been there. Like the like social media push, the fact that it was legitimately great.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, a lot of that stuff. Like he seems to there seems to be like a lifetime achievement vibe that he kind of deserves it as well. Like that feels like that's part of it. Like this is like the culmination of a great career. Like he's still got lots more to go, but like this is the time to really acknowledge this big milestone for him. Yeah,
The
I don't keep
role
up
of a
with awards very
lifetime,
well,
basically.
yeah, I don't know much about I don't keep up with the award shows very much, but if you ask me, he deserves it.
Well, and also the fact that a lot of who the awards go to comes down to money and lobbying, and HBO's got deep pockets, so I would expect no matter what, it's probably going to win a bunch of awards. But I think he definitely will probably deserve that one when he gets it. Absolutely incredible performance.
Yeah.
I didn't care for Viserys as a character reading Fire and Blood. He was kind of a big old nothing. It was like, all right, he's here, he's gone. Okay. And now because of Patty, he's one of those characters I'm going to think about often. And it's not because of what George wrote, it's because of what was on the screen.
It's a weird thing, yeah. Like never before has a character. There's almost no character in any of his writings in Westeros and beyond.
He's like barely there.
Would be this way, yeah. Like he's the most important, least described character. Like Alicent, also like we talked about, Alicent and Aemond are great examples of characters that we see a lot differently now.
Mm-hmm.
For them, it's more like we have a new opinion in part because they've been changed. With Viserys, sure, he's been changed, but it's more like it was blanks were filled in. And with Alicent, it's more like, oh, I see her as more nuanced now. It's like with this, you know, like I understand things, but also it's just different. She's 9 years changed in age, and there's no friendship with Rhaenyra at all in the book, so it's just very different. And like all three of these characters have had extremely good performances by their actors, but Patty's is the most like inventive, the one that the most like added something that nothing was there. With Alicent and Aemond, they're pretty fleshed out in the book.
Yeah,
they're more fleshed out in a lot of ways here in the show, but it's more that they've been changed really well, really effectively. With Viserys, it's more like this is new, where there was nothing, there was something. Yeah, there's like this is one, and now it's two. This is like that. This is one, now it's blue.
Especially because
paradigm.
How they've talked about him is that him and Matt Smith in particular did a lot of improvisation with their characters. They suggested a lot of things, which I know in Game of Thrones made people lose their minds because they didn't like the choices. But it seems like at this point, maybe Patty Considine gets almost a writer's credit for Viserys, because even his last words he said were improvised. When he said no more and he did all that, nobody told him to do that. They just said go for it, and he did. The scene with him and Matt Smith going up on the Iron Throne, that was all improvised. I mean, he was going up on the throne anyway, but him dropping it, picking it up, and them going for it, like that's a moment that came not from writers, as much as people are freaking out about writers these days, but they added a lot more flexibility to the actors. And so I think you can definitely say that Patty really made it his own in a way we don't know from Game of Thrones, really.
A way that we aren't able to see from other actors. There's probably at least a few other actors out there that are capable of adding this much to a role if the role allowed it. But most roles simply do not have this much space.
Dan and Dave didn't.
He nailed it. He nailed it. B, the role allowed for it. You know, that B is pretty important. You know, like a lot of people maybe would have dropped the ball, or just been good rather than great. You know, but yeah, that's a huge part of it. The unique way this role was quote unquote written, in Fire and Blood, because it wasn't, of course, written to be a TV role in the first place, but the way it's been adapted, it's just extremely unique. I don't know that we'll ever see anything else quite like it, because the circumstances just don't. I don't know that they exist for any other character like this. Or
there's one,
but it is
Larry Strong. Matthew Needham's doing incredible things with that character.
Sure, he is. Right, that's true. That's true. But we had strong opinions on what kind of type of character he is. I don't suppose that we're he is different, nuanced, but he's still villain.
He's within the box of Larys. Patty went outside of what was given, way outside of it.
Yeah, way outside of it. And I wonder how that will come up with some other characters like down the line when they do other eras or just other characters. Like you said, there's gonna be a lot of new characters popping up next season who from other regions, and maybe some of these will also actors who don't normally have the flexibility to explore their characters the way that historical figures have, because historical figures are by definition not as fleshed out. So it just makes sense that certain actors who have that ability to not some of them just do amazingly just as actors, but some of them also have creative talent to, you said, be effectively like secondary writers.
Yeah.
There's a few shows out there that do that. Like The Office was known for doing that, where like they specifically broke the mold and had some of the writers, you have to be in some scenes, so you know what it's like. So you can be on both sides of it, and that really helps them. Like that, like I think it's like, of course, like Kelly and Ryan and Toby are examples. Those are characters that are writers and actors, both characters. So it's almost like a version of that.
Sure.
They get room to write their own character. They're not actually writing the dialogue except for the ad libs, but have a lot of influence on how it comes out.
George does really not give a lot of these historical characters a lot to go on. Like one of my favorite ones is people are like, Aegon the Conqueror is my favorite character. I'm like, he's not a character. He's like, he barely exists. We know nothing about him. We know.
They like the characterization of him is that he keeps himself a secret, so there's very little to know. Like he intentionally hides what he's all about.
He's mysterious. You like mystery. That doesn't tell you a whole lot about him. Like we learn a lot more about Visenya and Rhaenys than we do Aegon. He's like kind of a blank slate. So I think that in some cases that's probably why people are really into certain characters, because they get to project a lot onto them because there's not a lot there. But
they have a sense that there's a lot they could add to it. They're like, oh, you know what? I have some ideas for this.
Yeah. Comment here. Sean Collins was recent interview with Condal clarifies how the writing room actually works and straight up says the fans aren't just wrong about characters, but how the show gets made. Yeah, I mean, fans don't understand how TV shows work. Like, especially not something like something like House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones, where no one person has total control over what shows up on the screen. Not even the editor, not even the showrunner. It's everything's by committee, everything's by decision. So like, if you're one of those people that's out there screaming about a particular writer that you really hate, that you think butchered some character, know that it was the entire production. No one person did it to anybody.
A lot of people signed off on pretty much everything.
Yeah.
But not everyone signed off on everything. You're right. Committees, it's all committees. That's my understanding as well. Yeah.
They have 2 showrunners. They have a big writer's room. Actually, that's one of the things that I think is carrying over from Game of Thrones, is that people are used to being able to blame Dan and Dave because they really controlled the process from writing to shooting to editing the whole way out. House of the Dragon is not that. Ryan Condal is not sitting down, typing out the scripts himself, and then directing it, and then seeing it the whole way through, and then going into the editing thing. Like, he's a part of the process, but no one person has that kind of power this time around.
Yeah, it is a different behind the scenes. The whole structure of the creative organization is different. That's really important to acknowledge. You're right.
Oof. Well, I think we're probably about done here, Aziz. Getting kind of late. Well, though not for us. Yep. We're up all night anyway. But if you guys have ever,
I believe we've handled it.
If you guys ever DM Aziz, the right time to get him is at like at 5 a.m, because he's always awake then. In the middle of the afternoon, like mid-morning, maybe not. Middle of the night, you'll get Aziz. That's when he's awake. Yeah, I thought this was, I guess before we go, where would you rate this episode in terms of the season so far? Like off the top of your head, how far? Like towards the top, towards the bottom, towards the middle?
I guess toward middle, upper middle. I
Hmm.
guess it's hard to say. I haven't been like rating them as I go through. Partly because both of the last two episodes suffered by not having some of their best cast members in them at all. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like the episode 9 we went from every episode having the four main characters, even when the actor switched, to episode 9 having only Alicent, no Damon, Viserys, or Rhaenyra, and this one, of course, no Alicent and a little bit of Otto, but no like
Smidge of
Kristen
Otto.
or yeah. So that's not like necessarily a bad thing, but all the other episodes jumped around so well, and the focused episodes are hard to compare to the ones that have the more of the sprawl of cast, even though we haven't gotten to full sprawl yet.
That's true. Also, Miguel Sapochnik said that in his mind, episodes 9 and 10 are just one long episode that they just got cut apart.
That's a good way to think about them. Yeah, I like that idea. As far as like how to frame it in your mind. What about you? Where do you rate it?
I thought it was well, it's hard to say because there weren't too many that I disliked. I don't think I disliked any of them. All of
Me
them
neither.
on my internal scale were at least very good. There were none that were like going down towards mediocre or fair or something like that. I was pretty well entertained the entire time. My favorite one, I think by far, was episode 8. I think that's everyone's agreeing that one's probably the best one of the season.
Good.
I haven't really ranked them in my head too much either. Yeah, it's probably middle of the pack. Seeing the Vagar and Luke stuff was pretty good.
I think if we
nothing
frame it in
really
terms
jumped
of
out at me as like this was exceptional, except for like the dragon person like connection stuff. I was like,
yeah,
that's really cool. That blew me away when I was watching that.
I thought that like if this was an award show for the season, you would highlight different things about different episodes that they excelled at. Like this one was like I think we said at the beginning, this one was probably the most cinematic,
Mm.
and like you said, maybe number 8 was the most emotional, and maybe number 9 was the most tense or something. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. There's a lot of like award for best scene with a dragon in it goes to I don't know. There's a lot of
I take it back
way.
slightly. There's one I didn't think too highly of, and that was the Driftmark episode. Not because of what happened, but because Miguel Sapochnik put that crazy dark filter on everything, and it was so hard to see. Like that was the one thing throughout the entire season that really annoyed me. Now I know how to make my TV look good. I know how to make it so I can see everything, but I didn't like the effect, and it was so present throughout the entire thing. I was like, I don't like this. I'm not a big fan. The story
It's
and
kind of
everything was
amusing that
great.
people were squinting.
Yeah, I like to see
It's
my show. So as basic as that makes me, but yeah,
I gotta agree with that.
I thought this was pretty good. There were a lot of high points. I felt there's a real sense of tragedy in this one, and I do really want to hear somebody give an interview like really delving into like Matt Smith or Damon choking Rhaenyra. I want to hear like a full explanation because they didn't do that one in the after the episode. I think I think we probably got there based on the clues in the episode, but yeah, that one that was the one thing that probably held me back from like throwing it into like the top tier of it. I was just like, okay, I need to think about this one for a few days before I think I understand it. If that makes sense.
I think it makes sense. Yeah, I mean, yeah, vibe with that.
Vibe with that. All right. All right, Z's, why don't you go ahead and pimp all your stuff out? Where can people find you? What do you have coming
All
up?
my stuff out.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna probably do some look backs at individual character arcs during the season and kind of look at things from their perspective. That's always fun to do, to see like their individual conflicts. And we'll continue to do our new parallel live series, and we'll be continuing. We'll get back to some book Fire and Blood material most likely. We're kind of still working it out. What's going to be going on in History of Westeros postseason. You know, is one of those things that we kind of had to play it by ear, so to speak. But the season went so well that I'm sure we'll have we'll have fun whatever we do, whatever we decide to do. We're gonna do some polling of our people and see what comes of that. Yep, we'll keep the content coming for sure, and have a good old time with it.
If there's a few things that are very steady in this fandom, it's that History of Westeros will find something to talk about, and will make it interesting anyway. Even no matter how small or weird or something you never thought about before, you guys will find a way to talk about it for 2 hours, and I will listen the whole time. It's kind of your brand.
Thank you, my friend. And thank you for having me. This was great. I really enjoyed chatting about it right after.
Now we have to go make content. Well, tomorrow we have to make content. Shaya's already working on content, I assume.
Yeah, she's right over here.
Yeah, just going away, making her short. Actually, by the way, this is something that you guys should definitely go watch. Shaya every Monday, I think, puts out her short recap episode of the short recap of the previous episode, and it's like 5, 6, 7 minutes long. It's like a really fast thing. She puts a lot of humor into it, stuff like that. Like, go check it out. I know everybody loves History of Westeros for their long form, but she does a really good job on those, so definitely make sure you go watch them.
Check out her Arrested Development intro.
That one too, that was so good.
About 18 seconds of the Greens Arrested Development. It's on our channel. You can
Great stuff.
Published just 2 days ago. So yeah.
I think people are surprised to see videos on your channel that aren't 2 hours long. So they're like, oh, what is this? This
hours or 18 seconds. You know, we've got a range.
Also wanted to say thank you to last few super chats that came in. Jen Hack, $2 Australian. Please keep up the great work during the break. No doubt about that one. I'm not going anywhere. Neither is Aziz and Ashaya. The content never stops. $2 from my Iara. What's the first off-season content? Well, I've got a video on Harrenhal coming, and then I'm going to do one about Aemond, and then after there, I don't know, because unlike most people for my content this season, I kind of picked and chose what I made videos on, kind of on a feel, rather than like any sort of systematic like review or anything like that. So there's a lot of stuff I can go back to that I just didn't feel it at the time, which of course totally worked out with like how successful those videos were. But I always have way more thoughts than I have time to put into a video. So don't you worry, there's going to be a lot more.
You may find some patterns or some things you didn't notice when you look at the season as a whole too. So yeah, maybe some new ideas come around.
It usually happens when I listen to you or Radio Westeros. I'm just like, you guys put everything into such an ordered way and have just a really systematic way of thinking about things. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that, and that links to that, and that links to that, and then all of a sudden the video comes out of nowhere.
Well, glad to help.
Well, helping everybody out. Also, Joanna Robinson, who apparently watches your stuff all the time.
That's very flattering. We're glad to have her as a friend and collaborator occasionally. She's
there you
great.
go. So I think that's probably it. We went for way longer than normal, 2 hours 45 minutes. This will be edited down probably to like hour 45 after I throw through these scripts. So look for that one coming out on the podcast feed. Actually, by the way, if you guys listen to this on the podcast feed on the Wit and Wisdom of Joe Magician, leave a review wherever you're listening to it if you could. Tell me what you think, especially on iTunes or whatever, but whatever site it is, whatever aggregator you use to find the podcasts, let's throw some good ones in there. And if you guys make me laugh, I will read them in the next live stream. So there you go. Actually,
incentive.
There's the incentive. Actually, people have been competing in my recent videos because they've been noticing that I keep pinning the comments that make me laugh the most. So now everyone's just trying to get me to laugh instead of telling me I'm wrong about some minor thing that doesn't matter. I prefer the one where they're trying to get me to laugh. That one works out way better. Well, anyway, thanks you, Aziz, for coming. Thanks everybody for hanging out tonight. We'll see you in 1.5 years or 2 years. For more Hot D coverage. Just kidding. That's who knows when the season's going to come back into season 2, but whenever it is, make sure you check both of our channels out. Everything you love will be coming back again.